Chapter 8, Informative Speaking. And 8.1 are the three goals of informative speaking. So number one is to stimulate audience interest. I want to make you more curious about what I've told, the information I've given you, right? So if you give a speech about phobias, if you've done a good job, the goal of your speech should make people want to learn more about phobias, or maybe get interested in their own particular phobias, because we all have a couple, right? Kids have them. Usually the ones that are like scared of the dark. The arachnophobia it's very common, especially among girls and females. Right? I remember like I've had ladies scream at me, and you think like there's a rapist in the room or something. You run in there ready to kill somebody, and it's a spider, right? And they're like, ah! And you just run over and they smash it with your fingers. And you kind of come and you chase the girls around with it, right? And you run away. And my daughter's like that. And I'm constantly just trying to teach her, like, grab a napkin or paper towel and smash it. Or if you cup it and put it outside, ideally. In Tahoe, we have a decent amount of spiders because in the wintertime, they go indoors because they can't survive outdoors in the winter, right? With all the snow and the freezing temperatures. So it's very, very common to find them here. And you cannot spider proof your house, by the way. All right, so my goal of my speech and my topic is to make the audience more interested. I want to make them curious about blank. Number two, let's increase audience understanding. I want to teach them a lot, give them a lot of information, knowledge, right? Facts, statistics, expert opinions, right? Studies, data, things from like journal, peer-reviewed, awesome research, right? That shows you like basically a lot of thought and energy and data went into coming to this conclusion, right? Number three, assist audience retention. Help people remember the information you've given them, right? Because how many of us have heard something, we're like, yeah, this is really, really good. And then when you need to remember it, you can't. And you're like, just like I did earlier when I was trying to remember the name of that movie, right? Songs of the South or something like that. It's not the most famous Disney movie either. And the reason why is because after like the 80s, they were like, because it was filmed in the South, right? So there's a lot of racist caricatures and kind of things that came out of the South that they were at the time when was normal, but now it's not politically correct at all, nor is it really dignified. So how do you help people remember what you've taught them? Association. So you connect things, right? And I'm going to give you an example of that in just a second here. Or I might say, hey, why did the Marines have that? Did you know the most famous commercial they've ever had? And it led to the record recruiting numbers. Number one commercial. Anybody want to guess? If you've seen, you can go to YouTube and watch all the Marines commercials, right? From the USMC. A lot of them now show real Marines, like assaulting, flying in. They're in their different vehicles, and they're all going through the desert, right? Looking at with their combat gear on. But anybody want to guess? It's the one where like he turns to a knight with a sword and slays a dragon. That's the most popular Marine commercial ever that led to record recruiting numbers. Basically, people joined the Marines because of that commercial in like huge numbers for men, young men, right? Because they wanted to slay dragons, right? So what did the Marines associate? They're like knights and dragons and swords, Marines, boom. So it works. You remember, if you connect certain things, it's easier to remember, right? So you might not remember the event, but you'll remember the association, right? So, and I'm going to give you, by the way, in this GIF, this is actually a real news interview, real GIF. I'll talk. I'm going to come to it in such a second. But he's actually holding a McDonald's bag the whole time he's on TV, right? So he's on national TV like all day, and he actually got, I believe, a year's worth of free McDonald's from the Ohio McDonald's because he was holding McDonald's bag the whole time on national TV for like the whole day getting interviewed, right? And so that's an association. I'll help you remember the story, which I'm going to tell you in a second about, and the McDonald's thing will help you remember the story, right? They're connected. Repetition, just saying certain things over and over and over. In writing, you never repeat yourself. In public speaking, in communication, repetition is a way to emphasize something and just over and over and over. You know how many times I've told my children to brush their teeth? Like, it's freaking amazing. And by the way, my kids went to the dentist, no cavities. That's awesome, by the way, because dental bills suck. And having little kids getting teeth drilled on sucks. So, my own interests, like that was really, really good. So, yeah, they have The evolution of how the Marines look at tattoos is interesting too, because it grew and grew and grew. And then they were like too much. And now I think it's limited to only basically when you have your short sleeve shirt on and your shorts or your pants, the tattoos can be visible. Otherwise, so if you do like your too many wrong places, I believe that kind of pass some laws, regulations against it. Yeah. So, and I believe, but a lot of Marines, when they deploy, the platoon gets a unit tattoo before they all deploy together as a way to bond together too, as well. So, and the acronyms. So this is this is the acronym that I like to use whenever I can. It's Dealey Gap. Does anybody know what it means? So an acronym is when that spells out a whole sentence. So it's the first letter of each word in the sentence together. You know, there's always, and here's some traditional ones. Dealey Gap means, do I look like I give a? Yeah. And then as soon as possible, estimated time of arrival, estimated time of opening, on my way, oh my God, right? LOL, GG. If you know, YOLO, and those are good ways to just help people remember things because of just the acronyms as well, So if you can create them, you might become famous because people catch on, especially in text messaging, right? Acronyms are useful than typing out all those words. So, okay. What's the GIF about? Does anybody know? I knew something was wrong when a little pretty white girl ran into a black man's arms, and then they called 911 immediately. And this happened in Cleveland, Ohio, about 10, 11 years ago. So this is the Cleveland, Ohio kidnappings. And what happened is this guy was eating his Big Mac, happy meal, and the next door neighbor's house, which was just, as far as he knew, a guy lived there. That was it. He sees this woman on the upstairs window, like banging on it. And he's like, eating his Big Mac, going like, huh, who is she? Nobody lives there but the dude, and he's at work, right? And then she comes busting out the front door, ran into his arms, yelling, you know, my name's like Gina De Jesus. I was kidnapped, call 911. He's just sitting there eating his Big Mac, going like, what? And then, so they call 911, and they realize there's 3 girls in this house who've been trapped there 10 years and were repeatedly assaulted and kept as slaves by this crazy guy. I'm not going to say his name. And then when he was arrested, he committed suicide a couple of days while he was in prison. He hung himself with his sheets. And this case is famous because we don't often rescue the girls or get them back. So the FBI has used this as one of the case studies of a kidnapping case. How all three girls got kidnapped, where they were kept, and so here's some details. The house was actually in the neighborhood that all the girls lived in. So the FBI, after a couple of years, thought they were probably trafficked at least 100 miles away from Cleveland, Ohio, when the whole time they're actually like a mile, 2-3 miles away from their homes. The evil guy would actually visit the parents and pretend to be a concerned neighbor and pray with them and, you know, like go to all the events and put up posters. We're looking for these girls and all this other stuff. And he had a teenage son and daughter from a previous marriage. And the kids had no idea that the dad was doing this. They didn't notice that the house was kind of off limits to them. They were never allowed really like upstairs, or they like would come in occasionally around the front room, the kitchen, and that was it. And they finally pieced it together. And then he was actually a bus driver in the school district, the evil guy. Okay, so if you watch this YouTube link right here, it'll tell you a quick like 2-minute Discovery Plus documentary about the case, if you want to learn more. So number 1, did I make you curious? If you didn't know about it, are you like shocked once you find out some of the details? There actually was a baby when they rescued the three girls. One of the girls got pregnant and then had a kid. Usually when the girls got pregnant, the bad guy would punch him in the stomach a bunch and cause an abortion and miscarriage, right? But they never let them take them to the hospital, so it was all done by the other girls. You can kind of understand, it's like Handmaid's Tale, but to another terrible level. And did you learn something? Did I teach you something? Yeah. And one of the things to learn also is that how all three girls got kidnapped by getting in his car, and then he drove them to his house and trapped them for a while. Now, the question is, why did they get in the car with him? Because they knew him. I told you earlier, detailed, that he had a son and daughter. So all three girls knew the guy and got in the car with him because they knew the son and daughter as one of the classmates, or they went to school with them, right? So what's the lesson to be learned there? Just because you know somebody, like who they are, like you recognize them, oh, that's such and such's dad. Like, don't trust them, right? Especially if you're anywhere vulnerable, where you can like be locked up and taken and nobody would know, right? Does that make sense? Because you're alone and it's night. And this is really smartphone era as well. So, because when the girls got out, they actually had part of their adjustment was learning what smartphones were and social media, because 10 years they were in there, the world had really changed too. So part of their rehabilitation was getting them ready to be overcome the trauma, but also this is what the world's like, and this is what do you want to how do you want to blend into it now, right? So 2 of the 3 girls talk about stuff. They're making a movie. There's a book. One of the girls is like, I don't want to see them or talk about it, or because it reminds me of it, and just is like, like moved on. All right, so 8.2, designs for informative speaking. There are expositions where we really expose something and deep dive into it. We want to define it. What's an assault weapon? Has a sniper scope, has a pistol grip, has a short stock or extendable stock, right? It's lightweight, has 30 bullet magazine capacity type stuff. And then, what is marriage? Is it man, 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 woman, 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 or only man, woman? And the Supreme Court, by the way, they may revisit gay marriage and overturn the case. I'm not predicting that, but I'm definitely saying it can happen. It's on their agenda. It's been pretty interesting, right? They got rid of Roe versus Wade after that was 72. So that was 28 years plus 22 years. So 50 years of president. So yeah, I think assault means you need to like charge in and be able to eliminate multiple opponents, right? It's kind of the way I look at it. And it's got to be automatic or semi-automatic. But that's definitely one that should be like agree with though too. So that's cool though. I mean, hopefully you don't have to assault anything in your life ever except for in a video game, right? Seriously, right? So comparisons. So in exposition, you want to compare your topic, like compare some of the phobias. Compare some of the other traumatic disorders that maybe lead people to commit suicide. Are there any? PTSD, really, right? Oh, every once in a while, yeah, maybe you might like see dementia or a couple other ones, right? But not nearly high. I think it's 22 per day, Derek, right? 22 veterans commit suicide per day. It's still the number I last heard recently. That is such a bummer of a statistic, right? Think about how many of that is per month and then per year. Talk about casualties, not on the battlefield though, right? But your mind was wounded. Then etymology. This is understanding the origins of words. So ology is the study of or the logic of, right? So biology, bio means life, ology is the study of logic, biology means the study and logic of life, right? Geology, geo is earth, study of earth or the earth. All right, so how about this one? What's pan mean? Sorry, just pan. All. That's why it's a pandemic. What was the continent that was theoretically connecting all of them called? And you'll see how etymology works. Pangea, right? Because Pan means all. Gea is female Earth. Geo is male Earth. So when all the Earth was one connected. So that's why they say the continent. And then you see that they think Pangea broke up due to the tectonic plate action. That's why you think it looks like Brazil could really fit into South Africa, and some other things like that as well. Pandora's box, a little box you open, you got all the world's evils and miseries and ills, right? So a pancake literally means all cake. So there you go. What kind of photograph is an all photo called? Panoramic, right? And you see, so how etymology is really, really useful. You learn the origin of a lot of just syllables, and you can then expand your vocabulary, but not by memorizing a word, but by just recognizing syllables. Right. So another one that I really like is photograph. As we all take a bunch of them. What does photo mean? Light. What does graph mean? Write or draw. We talked about it earlier. That's why graffiti literally means writing or drawing, right? So writing, photograph literally means writing or drawing with light. And that's what most photographs are. Although some digital photographs are starting to change, right? Because they're you can take photos at night when there's not that much light. So the digital cameras are kind of, the technology is kind of changing that a little bit. But anyhow, okay. What do we call the seat next to the driver in a car? People still yell it, right? If you're like a bunch of you are going to your friend's car, he's driving, so he's the driver. What do we call the seat next to the driver called? Yeah. Well, does anybody know why? Why do we call it shotgun? Kind of interesting, right? Because it's also etymology. So the stagecoach was delivering the mail, right? In Western America, like California, over the Pony Express Trail and everything, which actually goes through South Lake Tahoe. And then we get robbed because they were carrying valuable, people were, putting valuable stuff in the mail. So the drivers were like, yo, I need security. So they gave him a passenger, and they gave him a shotgun, and he rode right next to the driver. And they called that seat riding shotgun. And still today, even though we don't have stagecoaches, we have cars, see that the passenger seat in a car is known as shotgun because it goes back to the stagecoach security thing where they always rode shotgun and carried a shotgun, but sat right next to the driver, which hence that seat is called shotgun. Okay. And that's another good example of etymology. It's just interesting how you learn the roots. And anybody know the origins of their names or the meaning of them? Mine is from the Bible, and it means the rock, which is why St. Peter was the foundation of the church, Christian church, right? And rocks are stubborn and don't move on their own. So there you go. My daughter's name is Evangeline. It means gift from God. And Roman, my son's name, is obviously comes from the Roman Empire, and Roma, which is actually not Rome because the Italians call it Roma, but translated in English, it's Rome. Yeah, so it comes from the word Roma, which is the biggest, the city on the Tiger. Oh, sorry, what's the river called? Tiger. Can't believe I forgot. My memory's fading. Huh? I haven't thought about that in a while. I can think of the story because the story is the two brothers and wolves founded the city of Rome. I think after escaping from something. So that's part of the Roman mythology. They largely copy from the Greeks. All right, so then demonstration. So again, demonstrate moves, how to load a gun, a pistol, safety, how to bake a cake, how to make a pancake, how to make hard-boiled eggs, right? A lot of things you could demonstrate. And then analysis, where you think about something a lot and then you're able to paraphrase it well, use your own words. And then, anybody here analytical? I'll raise my hand. You get sometimes very contemplative and thinking about stuff. Future, maybe a little bit about the past, relationships, money, decisions, people. And when do we do this? Driving, walking, right before we go to bed, in the shower, right? There's some interesting things when you kind of get contemplative and analytical and you start thinking thoughtful and thinking of stuff. And then there's also description. And this is where in your informing speech, you really need to describe the object you're talking about. Right? I mean, maybe it's going to be an iPhone or a computer, what it's really made of, right? And the size, its shape, its color, its weight, and its composition. Right? Anybody here actually opened up your phone and looked at it? I used to try and fix all the cracked screens or replace things in them. So I was always opening up my phones and just you can see the touch screen, the battery, the processor, the camera. There's a bunch of wires, some, a little bit of a soldered motherboard of some small sort. SD card, if you have that, the memory cards. And yeah, so it's pretty interesting, right? To really understand the composition of your phone or the composition of your car and the engine, right? And understand it. Anybody here can find the oil stick in your engine, in your car? Or you can say no, I have no idea. Some people have a hard time opening the hood to their car, right? So can you change your own flat tire? That's an interesting skill too. I usually call AAA first because I have the membership. I do the $250 one because I've had to get my car, or wasn't mine, but I've had someone's car towed like 125 miles. So that's pretty far. And yeah. Yeah, I mean, I teach my children. They're like, why do we want, we don't care. I was like, no. One day you'll drive and you want to know this, right? Because if something breaks or goes wrong, you'll trust me. It's interesting, right? Understand, you use a car all the time. You should understand how it works. So that's where you put in the gas, right? And how you turn it on, drive it, and use it. I'm like, look under the hood, right? I was on someone's boat the other day. The whole time I was like, can I check out your engines? He's like, no, nobody ever asked me that. He's like, cool, yeah, check it out. Because he's like, I've done some modifications, right? So it's kind of his opportunity to brag about the stuff. Because it's really like guy stuff, right? Like a 450 horsepower, overboard dual engine. So he's got 900 horsepower on the lake. It's pretty cool. You can go 45, 46. I was on a jet boat this weekend. It was making 37 miles per hour. A jet boat is it's basically a giant jet ski instead of an actual boat with traditional propeller engine. So it handles really differently as a result too. So and it has two engines, and so you got to shoot the jets equally, because otherwise you shoot one, you kind of just go in circles. That makes sense too as well. So then we can also do a narration or tell a story, which we already did for story time, right? And your story should generally illustrate some kind of point, which is why a lot of you have a moral or lesson from your story. You want to know your story instead of reading it. Just paraphrase it. I look at a story and read it a couple times, and then once I've got it down, I feel like I just tell it without looking at the story anymore, right? I just tell it from memory, and then become the various characters. How? Yeah, you use your voice, right? Like a high pitched tone of voice or a low tone of voice, or an accent like get to the chopper, get to the chopper. Oh wait, I lost my get to the chopper. I wanted to kind of do my British accent, right? Blimey, peace off, you bloody wanker, right? That's not even that good. My New Yorker again, forget about it. My Southern twang, y'all's fixing to go down in the swimming hole and go drive our trucks down there, shoot our guns, and kiss our sisters. All right. That's a joke again. And then time your story. So just practice when you tell your stories, real quickly, just time it. See how, because does anybody ever told the story over and over and over? You'll notice that mostly it's kind of varies in length and the details kind of change, right? No story is exactly the same over and over. You tend to kind of just wing it slightly different each time, right? It depends on your audience, maybe what details you include or exclude in the language that you use. So 8.3, let's talk about language use for informal speaking. So keep it simple so people understand. It's easy to decode and interpret your verbal and nonverbal communication, right? Simple language is good. Simple language is good. Don't use big words. You're not trying to impress people, make people think you're smart, right? You're trying to put them first and connect with them and share something with them. Specific language, which we call a jargon, is bad. Unless your speech topic is about the jargon, then you'll do a deep dive into it, right? So jargon is like a language that comes from a culture or occupation, a job, or a video game, right? So we got some, anybody want to give me some gamer jargon? Right? They're like GG, noob. I don't know. What am I trying to? AFK. Thank you. Away from keyboard. I don't video game. But I usually get a lot of examples from the audience typing in the chat, right? Like, because a lot of you play video games and on PCs or computers and type stuff on your keyboards, right? So, like, all your base are belong to us. Does anybody know what that one is? What's KEKW? I don't know that one. You can just go on the mic if you want to, Derek, if it's easier real quick. Okay. K is the one I don't know for that one. Okay. All right. BRB, be right back. Okay. Oh, this is the one that I remember. We were pwned, or I repwned you, or did I say that right? It's a misspelling of owned, I think. All right. So why do we avoid jargon? Because a lot of people don't know it, and then they don't understand what you're saying, right? Actually, yeah, but I mean, you see that a lot of gamer jargon is acronyms, though. Actually, right? So, there's medical jargon, police jargon, military jargon, right? What's an FNG in the military? Fucking new guy, right? There's also, sorry, all fucked up. Snafu, situation normal, all fucked up. And then there's FUBAR, fucked up beyond all repair or recognition. And then, you got KIA, WIA, POWs, right? There's just a lot of military acronyms. A lot of jargon is acronyms. Again, and that's also why a lot of people don't know it, right? So if you're going to use jargon, what do you always want to do in your speech? Define it, right afterwards. Always explain what the acronym or the jargon is, just in case there's some people who don't know. I was actually doing a lot of legal work recently and talking to people about BMP. And I remember one of the clients was like, okay, I don't know what that means. Can you actually tell me? Because you keep talking about it, but I don't know what it means. And it means best management and practices. So these are things that you should do in your property that are not law, but are highly recommended, right? Does that make sense? You don't have to do it by law, but it's best management and practices, which if you do, preserves the value of your property. A good example might be here in Lake Tahoe, because we have so much snow in the wintertime. Well, unless there's a drought. But sometimes we have record snow. So everything gets wet. So drainage matters a lot, where the water goes, because you don't want it coming down to your house and flooding your house, right? So best management practices might be, say, please put gravel around your house. So it helps filter the water before it goes out into the dirt and it doesn't get muddy, right? But you got to buy gravel and then have laborers, or you yourself, like me, wheelbarrow and spread it and shovel it and cover, your 10,000 square foot lot if you're lucky to have a lot like that big or something, right? So it's a lot of work, extra work. Does that make sense? So some people do it, some people don't. But when you sell your house, the appraiser, because you have gravel around the house versus other people don't, right? And you want defensible space here because of the fire risk, your price value can go up. And that way, when you sell it, you can get more money for it. So that's the idea, right? Okay. So it's like, yeah, what is, BMP? I'm always like, it means best management practices. Okay. We also, again, want to keep our language active, not passive, right? If you give a bunch of information, and you say, I hope I informed you. Like, no, you did inform us, right? So another good example of that is somebody might ask you for a second of time. What they're really asking for you is a few minutes of your time, right? Minimum, right? But they want to minimize the word, right? So again, active language is much stronger than passive language. It's much more direct, right? Personal language is good. I, you, us, we, personal pronouns. So as a speaker, you can use personal pronouns all the time. We are going to learn this, and this can be sexy, right? But in writing, you write third person, not first person, so you don't use pronouns, right? That's a big difference between essay writing and prose and poetry versus public speaking. Guiding language, bridging language, what we also call transitional language, is really good. Like, follow me here to point number 1. that leads me to point number 2. We're moving on to point number 3, right? So words and language that connects things and shows movement. So it's really good for your transitions. So when you're going from point to point to point, next, let's come, that wraps up point number 1. That leads me to point number 2. You see how the numbers and the words make it very clear. And hopefully your slides show that as well, that you're smoothly segueing from parts of elements of your speech to the next part, right? And that's very master level speaking stuff too. If you're really gotten your transitions down, you've gone really far in the journey of public speaking, right? So unbiased language is really great. Humanity versus mankind. Mankind is maybe biased because it says man, and it kind of excludes women. So I try and say Homo sapiens, which is our species name actually, to refer to, or I might say like people, Terrans, from people from Earth, instead of having like sort of a good way to say that. Feminists will spell women without the men in it because they think that word is biased. Manhole or street cover, or like they found that the people, some cities don't like the fact that they call them manholes now, the little circle steel thing that goes over the street when you've got a sewer or a drain thing you got to access, right? So they were trying to rename it to like a cover, or like right, instead of. Now some people are like, I don't give a damn, right? But I believe language has power and reflects how you think and shapes how you think and how you see the world and what you share with other people. And I think it matters a lot. I don't use any of the racial slurs. I think they're all terrible. I don't use any of the homophobic slurs, gay, F word. I don't do any of those. I just think they're all biased words. There's no reason to use them and put them in your vocabulary. And I actually let people know if they use the words around me that I don't like it, right? But I have a boundary about. I don't think that's cool because language has power. I think it shapes reality. I think if you thought of your daughter as a bitch all the time, that like. Right? If you see the example that I'm giving there, right? Or if you think your son should be a stud, you teach him to be a misogynic, toxic, masculine guy, right? Or was it Joe Biden compared Mexicans to burritos or tacos or something? She's gotten a lot of heat for that, right? Unbiased language, I think, is the best way to go, personally. I really do believe in that. You can't. Remember, if you put the audience first and your language is unbiased, you're never going to offend them, right? I've seen people use certain language and people in the audience do get offended. Whether they should or not is a different question, but I've seen it happen, right? And again, you remember, you want to put your audience first. You want to take care of them. If you don't have to offend them, why would you? So you can always use, and here's another good example. How should you refer to your audience? Ladies and gentlemen, right? Can't offend anybody with that one. I've seen people say, you guys, and some of the women were like, I'm not a guy. I don't like, right? You guys. Interesting. I've seen people also be called dudes, and the older people got offended by that. Right? Some young people are like referring to the audience as dudes. Hey, dudes, dudettes. And yeah, so just it's you never know who's in your audience, but you want to take care of them, be open-minded, be accepting of them, and put the audience first. So let's also use lots of positive language, euphemisms, because etymologically, EU means good. What are words that use EU, or you is how you pronounce it? Euthanasia, euphoria. There's more. Eulogy, right? So EU or you means good. So eulogy, saying good things about people at their funeral. Euphemism, a good way of saying something. Euthanasia, good death. Thanos is death in Greek. Eu is good, is actually how EU, where it comes from, actually. And euphoria, good feeling. All right, so yeah. Eustress, good stress. Distress is bad stress. I spelled that wrong. Too many S's. Something, it looks wrong to me. There's only one. Yeah, that's correct. All right, so again, etymology is pretty cool like that. Dis usually means against, right? You means good. That's a good syllable to just learn, right? So if you see any word with the word you in it, you can guess that part of it means something good, right? And positive language matters. Do you know that people, when you say the word nuclear, what do they think of? Nuclear bombs. So nuclear power kind of has this language bias built into it because people think of nuclear bombs when instead of nuclear power or something, right? Instead of just the atomic process of fission. So euphemisms are a good way of saying something, right? So people didn't die, they passed away. You didn't get fired, you got laid off. You're not ugly, you're aesthetically challenged. You're not fat, you're big boned. And you know what? The research says it does matter that people like the positive because the real world might be a little bit dark or have a bad association, like suicide, right? There are a bunch of words out there like people don't like that. Yeah, Brandon, that one's an interesting one because I'm trying to teach you to have unbiased language. So like, it depends on what you mean by political correctness. You should be who you are. You should articulate what you need to do. You shouldn't reserve your opinion because you're afraid to offend. But I think you should understand that some things you can say or do can be offensive, and you want to generally. But we're talking about, for me, I would say be more politically correct when you're doing public speaking to like this gigantic audience. In your personal life, yeah, does that make sense? But you kind of also see this whole cancel culture thing happen, where if you're in the play out in public and you say something on PC, people might rip you for it, right? And then they try maybe even cancel you. So like, I think cancel culture is fair, by the way. I mean, just if you were in a little village and you did something and everybody in the village thought sucked, you were shunned, and that was your whole life, right? You could have just moved, change your name, your identity, moved to another village, right? It was just so people didn't do shit like that because you're. And by the way, censure, shame, public censure works. It's basically shaming. They find that like putting in jail people in prison doesn't work necessarily. It doesn't rehabilitate you, right? So like, what's the best way to get criminals not to repeat crimes? That means they're not recidivist. Recidivist is repeating behavior, criminal behavior. So recidivists suck because it means they go to prison, get out, do the same thing, go back to prison, right? And they repeat this pattern. So shaming. So you remember back in the day, if you like did something bad, like stole something in the public square in your little village, they would lock you in the stockade for the whole day with a big sign that said your name and what you did. And the kids would come, like spit on you or throw rotten fruit in your face, and you couldn't do anything. And then when you came out of that thing, like those people never did anything bad again, right? And so we generally don't do it except for one place. Does anybody know, where do we publicly shame criminals? I think we all know the answer. I'm going to share a screen to show you the answer. And it's sex offenders. It's called Megan's Law. So when you're a registered sex offender, you have to legally register your address and location. So basically everybody knows who you are, what you did, and there you go. So I'm going to look up a neighborhood. Anybody want to type? Where was? Shoot, sorry. I want to search the map. I do a map search. Here you go. Oh, I got to hit about. Okay. The zip code. All right. I'm sharing to you. Anybody want to go look at their zip code within 2 miles and see who the registered sex offenders are that live near your house? I tell my daughter when she moves out of my house, I'll tell her like, oh, where are you going to rent or live? But I'm gonna look it up for her and be like, yo, hell no, right? Or yeah, that's safe. Okay, so 95129. I have to do a value. Oh, damn. Can you make up a different address? You don't have to put your own. I need a whole address. I can do mine in Sunnyvale. Oops, street number. Whoops. I'm looking up Sunnyvale, California, 94087. And 2 miles. And oh, look at that. That's a lot. I got to zoom in a little bit here. So my house is right here. So the closest sex offender is actually here. And it's Sergio Lopez. He's 5'3", weighs 148, born in 1981. No picture of him. And these are his known aliases, quite a few. He's Hispanic, black hair. He's guilty of lewd or lascivious acts with a child under 14 years of age. Yeah, this guy should burn, by the way. My personal opinion about that. Risk assessment is a scores of 1. Happened in 2017, so 5 years ago. And there you go. By the way, this is why we publicly shame them, because most people's opinions of sex offenders is let them burn, right? Like, we don't put murderers out there. We don't put burglars out here. We don't have a Megan's Law for any of that stuff. Pretty interesting, huh? So part of me is like, maybe we should expand this to like really get all those people who are doing like the big robberies of the stores and stuff, like the jewelry stores and everything, right? Or hitting a CVS and stuff. And like, yeah, well, I think we should put their name and address out there, and everybody should know who they are forever, and it should follow them and haunt them forever. And I think that's the best way to get people to change behavior. In my personal opinion, I don't want to put them in prison. They have to pay for that shit, right? Prison guards, you know, all that stuff. I don't think that's incarceration. I don't think is the answer for me personally. And slap on the wrist isn't the answer either, right? So I don't know. What do you? This is my, you know. Did I sway anybody? When it raise your hand, type yes or no. And I'm, you know, I won't. If you type no, I won't hold that against you or not. But it's, you know, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do a Megan's Law sex offender register for like all the major felonies. Tax evaders too. Why not? Okay. It's a little bit of a minority report, right? And then we start predicting your future behavior and having this whole, you know, dossier on every human being in America. Okay. The types of informative speeches. Expository, again, where we deep dive, expose things, right? Deep dive into like a band or a person, a place, a thing, a story. Roswell, New Mexico. Was there really aliens there? Right? What really happened? 3 Mile Island. That's a good Netflix documentary. Or Chernobyl, right? HBO show. Stuff like that. Again, demonstration speeches. We talked about that earlier. A lot of things you can demonstrate on camera. What's the weakest part of a grip? Like if a bad person grabs you, tries what's the weakest part of a grip in the human hand? So you want to try to go for that to try and run away and yell and scream for help, by the way. That's the other thing you should definitely do too. Make lots of noise. It is the thumb, right? So when someone grabs you, the thumb is the part that if you can get that off, you may be able to get away, right? So, oh my God, the 10-year-old girl who got raped in Ohio, and they banned abortion. She had to go to Indiana to get the abortion because she didn't want to have that kid. And it made the news, and they caught the rapist, by the way. But the story became political over the weekend. I don't know if you heard, because they're basically using it as an example, the pro-choice people, as how messed up this law is, that a 10-year-old gets raped but can't have an abortion, has to go to a different state, right, and travel as a 10-year-old, and be able to afford that. And so a bunch of the Republican conservatives who really who are pro-life, they actually, their first reaction to the story was, this is all a lie. This whole 10-year-old doesn't even exist, right? So the fact that this whole story came out and it's real and we know we caught the rapist is like, you know, made those guys look really, really bad. It kind of shows you, I think, why they're full of shit. That's the number one reason I'm not a Republican, is I just think they're a bunch of liars. Does everybody see that? It's like, I'm not as democratic in terms of the agenda, although I do agree with a lot of it. But I really just think the Republicans, it's not what they stand for. It's just, they just really, really big about lies, conspiracies. You know, a bunch of them think the election was stolen in 2020 when, you know, it wasn't. And finally, by the way, and that's mostly due to the influence of Trump. So if he kind of goes away politically, which I'm not predicting, then you'll maybe see them stop going crazy on all the lies, conspiracies. But that's just my personal opinion about that. So about why I'm not a Republican. Bunch of other issues, pretty cool. One of my friends are Republicans, by the way. Like a lot of them mentioned that how much, yeah, that's cool that we can be different politics and we try not to talk about it, but like we don't let it poison the relationship in any shape or form or matter. The other day, one of my friends, she was bashing on Biden a ton. She's saying he's senile and so what was it? Yeah, and I just let her talk. I didn't argue or disagree with her. I just let her talk, let her express her opinion. It's cool. She trusts me that she can express this opinion, that I don't get offended, right? And that's why we are. It's cool. I don't agree with it necessarily, but maybe, I don't know. I was like, what particular thing you're talking about? But there you go. Okay. She's also anti-vaxxer, which we've had some interesting discussions. She cried when I got my kids vaccinated, as an example. She was like, "Oh, don't do it! Don't do it! Save them!" All right. I thought that was funny. I even bit my tongue when she told me Uvalde school shooting. She saw the story on Instagram that the reason the cops didn't go in. It's all on video now, by the way. It's pretty depressing. Because it's just sad to know what happened, but to see it in video was depressing because they basically mill around for an hour and 17 minutes and hear shooting going on. And the reason they're milling around, by the way, is when they first tried to confront the gunman, he fired 17 rounds at them, and they just retreated and then stayed away for 1 hour, 17 minutes. Gathered some gear. It's pretty interesting. You can watch the video for yourself, right? It'll be studied for a long time, right? Because police officers are not supposed to do that. They should have gone in. They even talk about it. As soon as you have two officers and there's one gunman, you attack, right? Because you save lives and you have weapons, and the other people in the room don't. So, and by the fact that, and also when he shot at them, the 17 rounds, that's considered active shooter, not barricaded, which means because the police chief who ordered them to stand down, he basically was calling the shooter a barricaded shooter, which is why he was like, we can't assault him. We need a SWAT team or a tactical team. They waited for the Border Patrol, federal agent SWAT team to show up. And they're the ones who actually went in. And then the gunman killed himself. So, okay. So after 1 hour and I believe 17 minutes. So yeah. You actually see one police officer goes to the hand sanitizer in the hallway because they're just milling around. One guy's checking out his phone. It's pretty nuts, right? Fight or flight, they talked about that. Remember, I told you earlier, the psychological effect of stress on human brains is fight or flight. Getting shot at causes massive stress, but police officers and soldiers are trained to fight rather than flight instinct in that situation, right? But they kind of were studying the videos, and I was reading, they were talking about, you see that the flight instinct is taking over, and they're trained to, they weren't allowed to go in. I didn't actually watch the complete video, but yeah, they weren't allowed, right? So it would have been, breaking orders. In the movie, what would have happened for sure? The hero guy would have been like, "Screw you, Commander! I'm going in!" Right, by himself, kills all the bad guys, wins the day. But yeah, so, and I don't want to criticize. I'm criticizing these officers based on what I read from all the experts. I actually read this thing about like 25 different tactical experts, police officers, training guys. And one of the things I will mention is they say that urban cops are trained pretty well, and municipal suburban cops and SWAT teams, and they get a lot of training. The rural cops is where they see the deficiency in the readiness in the training. And that is also one thing that's can maybe come out of there too as well, right? So it's like, you're in a small town, you need to be up on this too. It can't just be the New York cops, and the LAPD and all that stuff, right? When you see SWAT team, like the TV show, I don't watch it, but they're all in big cities, right? It's not like SWAT team in BFE, Texas or something, right? Because usually that stuff goes on. Right? Anyhow, I'm gonna get off. I'm sorry. I'm sad. My daughter was in 4th grade, right? You kind of like, and I have lots of friends who are teachers, and it's just like, but in the end, it's the school shooter. I don't forget that, right? It's the shooter where you put, 90% of the blame. The 10% I would maybe put on the shooter's family and parents and how he, like his story. I know a lot about some of the other shooters. Columbine, Parkland, Nicholas Cruz's story is really sad and messed up. The kid who shot up the Buffalo grocery store. His story seems a little messed up. And then the kid who most recently shot up, not Uvalde, but the 4th of July shooting. His story's ugly. Like his family story's ugly. His dad's story seems kind of ugly. Cops went to his house, I think in the last 5 years for that shooter, 12 times. 12 different times they've been called to the family's house over the boy's behavior. And, you know, the family's like basically just ignoring it all, saying like, our boy's fine, you know, like he can have his guns, you know, so. No, it seems pretty bad. It seems really, really bad. I was reading it too. And the reason, okay, so the reason I think this is important is if you basically, if parents realize they can go to jail and get really publicly shamed because everybody knows who they are and like he has a business and like, you know, all this other stuff, right? They can be liable. I think they'll care more about their kids, not turning into at least, you know, not just good citizens, but like at minimum pay enough attention, they don't turn into mass shooters, right? That's why I'm like, I think that's a, you know, because like you want to control how much your kids are on their social media. Parents need to do that, right? How much your kids play violent video games. And part of me is like, that's the parents, right? Not government or teachers, their friends. But that's right. So that's what I would kind of say about it from my own personal, like where I want to do solutions, right? I'm trying to be very, very solution oriented here, not political in any way, right? So, yeah. So, okay. Where are we? Then we again have analysis. Think of something, be analytical, then learn to paraphrase it and explain it in your own words. Again, describe things, a person, a place, or an event. Event could be like EDC. I've heard some speeches about EDC or Coachella. I think they're fun. I mean, those are actually pretty good topics, right? They're just fun and interesting. A lot of facts, statistics, stories, a lot of good visual aids. Place might be like the Grand Canyon, or I'm going to Maui, and I haven't been there since I was 21 years old, so it's been 29 years. And it's my kid's first time, so that'll be super cool, right? And we could really describe that place, the beaches, the volcanoes, the national park, which we'll actually bring a jacket for, because at the volcano at the top, you can see the sunset or the sunrise, and it's above 10,000 feet, so you need a jacket. It's the only time you really need a jacket when you visit Maui, even in the winter. But that's why you don't need one. And a person could be like a famous person like Henrietta Lacks, or I was trying to think my number one role model in life, maybe Steph Curry. Another one might be like, I had a person in mind. For a little while, it was Elon Musk. But some people that I really admire and inspire me, and I like to tell my children, I teach my children about, because I don't teach my children about celebrities, social media influencers, great athletes at all. I'm like, those people don't even care about them, right? Seriously, like find good role models, people who matter, who are like real, right? So one of my daughter maybe wants to be a chef, cook for a living, and I know a private chef who's really good. And so I introduced them, and they've made pizza together and like cherry tarts and some pretty interesting stuff, and all from scratch. 100% everything's from scratch, right? And she was really, you know, my daughter was like, I'm starting to really get inspired and motivated by her and what I learn and everything. She has all the cooking stuff in the kitchen for all that, right? And also like the creativity. And that's really fun to make something. And then everybody's like, wow, this tastes really awesome, right? Like, is there more? I'm like, no. But because you realize if you need to bake or cook on like a much bigger scale when you're trying to feed like 8, 9, 10 people, right? Than just like 2 or 3 or 4. And it's crazy how much work goes in and all the cleaning you have to put into it. So yeah, all right. So does anybody here have a person that they love or know something about, would love to talk about? Maybe who's the father of anime? Who did Spirited Away? Kurosawa, for example, right? Or like maybe you're if you're a Marine, there's a lot of famous Marines, for example, like Chesty Puller. Or Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, billionaires. For me, I like Warren Buffett comes to mind, by the way. If you don't know who he is, I highly recommend you learn about him. Or really, I think you should learn about him. His nickname is the Wizard of Omaha because he's from Omaha, Nebraska. And his company's called Berkshire Hathaway, and they own a lot of cool stuff. I'm gonna just show you really quickly, like what does Warren Buffett actually own through Berkshire Hathaway? And so they own Geico, the insurance company with all the fancy commercials, Duracell batteries, Dairy Queen, BNSF Railways, or train station, train red network, Lubrizol, no idea what that is, Fruit of the Loom, underwear company, Helzberg Diamonds, Long and Foster, don't know what that is, Flight Safety International, I think that's a airplane company, Shaw Industries, don't know what that is, Pampered Chef, don't know what that is, Forest River, don't know what that is, NetJets is a jet company, and they own 38.6% of Pilot Flying J, which is a gas station convenience store network in the Middle East. And they have significant minority public holdings in Kraft, which makes like Kraft cheese and stuff like that. This is from the wiki page. Big interest in Kraft Heinz, which is the ketchup company. And by the way, if you follow NFL football, Pittsburgh Steelers, Heinz Field, they just changed the name because Heinz isn't paying for the sponsorship anymore. So it's like some other corporate name now. They own 18.8% of American Express, 11.9% of Bank of America, 9% of Coca-Cola Company, and 5.56% of Apple. Major holdings in major airlines, but they sold those before the pandemic. Smart. I own some airline stocks and they're still kind of shitty last I looked. And then he's also the world's most successful stock investor of all time. On top of all this, yeah, so his quotes are awesome. When people are greedy, I am scared. When people are scared, I am greedy, right? Yeah, I really, really think you should, this is a guy, like, it's worth learning about him. And one thing he does, he actually, he's the world's most successful stock investor of all time. He actually shares his stock investments publicly. He has a website where you can do, and some people just copy him because he's the world's most successful stock investor of all time, and they just copy whatever he does. So yeah, and that's another reason I would say, like, okay, maybe you want to learn about stock investing and start doing it, even though you're a poor college student. Maybe you should look at Warren Buffett and start copying him as an initial model of kind of what you should do, right? Just like in this class, I've tried to give you a lot of models of speeches and outlines, so that because I think that that's a great way for people to learn. I really believe that, right? It's not like super intellectual. It's just like I see this and I can mimic it, right? Human beings are really good at copying stuff, right? Most of us are good at that, right? We're really good at copying people we like. You know, we see cars that people drive, are like, I want that too. Or the phone or clothes, or yeah, absolutely. Got to teach financial literacy. We don't do it in school. It's up to your parents to teach children about money, and a lot of parents don't do it and don't know how to do it. If you want to learn about money, check out Jumpstart. So $sign for the S, and there's they're the Coalition for Financial Literacy in America, and it starts off with a quiz. You can just take a test that tests your financial literacy, and then you get a score, and then it'll compare it to high school seniors. So you can see if you're as financially literate as the average high school senior or not. And then after that, it has a lot of resources to really learn financial literacy. All of it, right? What's an escrow account? What's a Belarus tax mean? What's a restrictive covenant? What's an easement? You know, what are interest rates on things, on debt, and then on savings accounts? What's a bond? What you have a home mortgage? When do you have to pay mortgage insurance? Right, when your down payment's not big enough. Mortgage insurance is insurance that if you don't pay your mortgage for whatever reason, you lose your job. And you can you're sick, right? You have medical issues, medical payments, or something like that. That the insurance will cover the mortgage payments on your house, right? But you have to pay that extra. So that's an expense that I've never paid it because I've always put down the minimum amount that you need for not to pay it, which means you're financially invested into the property without future payments already, but they're not worried that you're not going to make the payments. So Okay. And that's all jargon on real estate, by the way, right there too. So, like at BMPs, CCRs, those are codes, covenants, and restrictions. I could talk about, shoot, yeah. Actually, I don't. All right. Narrative speeches, which are again from personal experience or historical, and we did a storytelling speech. We talked about that earlier, just over here on narration. So April 5 is about Q&A. So in our class, we don't have time to do a Q&A. In real classroom speaking, we could do a little bit of it. You can do Q&A by asking questions of the speaker, right? So for example, you watch somebody's informative speech, you could leave a reply and say like, oh, you mentioned this, like, where did you get that source? Or like, can you clarify that? Because I would like to learn more about it, right? So, and they can answer it because the speaker can, and all that's part of is good for your Canvas online participation grade. So, but generally, so answering questions from the audience, I would tell you, assume they may be belligerent. And belligerent means, for vocabulary way, it means hostile. Right. So, be prepared. So expect questions and then have a thought out replay. Just like a job interview. You should think about every question you'd be asked in a job interview and think about how you would answer it. Spontaneous answering of questions in a job interview will result in a failure of the job interview a lot. You can be too honest, just say the wrong thing, get kind of stressed out or anxious and just ruin the interview, right? So just job interview is every question they're going to ask me, I know what I'm going to say ahead of time. How do I find out job interview questions? Got to go to glassdoor.com. If you never use this website and you try to find a job or you're trying to find a career, you've not been doing it right. So glassdoor.com is awesome. We don't have this because of the internet. So employees can rate their own company. That's why we mean Glassdoor. So none of the reviews on all the companies here comes from anybody except for people who actually work at the company. So we can go look at like jobs and learn all kinds of things. You can see what the salaries are and the different careers. And I'll just search for job. Well, let's look up a company. Let's compare it. So, you can see it's saying South Lake Tahoe because it knows I'm in South Lake Tahoe. So, you can learn about Intel, Amazon, Walmart, working at Target, NVIDIA, HubSpot, eXp Realty, Bain Company, Box, Google, like every company's in here, right? So let's go take a look at Google. My brother works at Google, so I'll just see. Oh, what did I click? I didn't click Google. Shoot. Oh. Hair companies. So Google versus Microsoft, I guess. Let's do this. Do I need an account to look at it? Sorry, maybe. That may make you pay for this a lot too. So you can find out interview questions by going to, wait a minute, what do I got to do to, what's this button says? Add your review salary. Like, no. I have an account. Sorry, I got to log into this beforehand so then everything works. So I'm going to go out of this again. Let's go to Glassdoor account. So you can go and find out the careers, and here are the interview questions. Did you ever see that? So you can actually find out, like if I'm going to go to, let me think of Aleworks, which is a pizza bar place here in town. There's a couple of them. Oh, there's 0. Okay, so let me go back. Oh, I should change the zip code. You notice it wants me to log in, so I'm not going to let, but you could find all the interview questions, what you should be paid, all the companies, the CEO specific, and then all the specific jobs. So get an account. It's super worth it. Trust me. It's an amazing freaking research. It's actually out of a resource. It's out of Sausalito, California, in Marin County, and it's glassdoor.com. And LinkedIn is the other resource you should be using to get a job too, by the way. And that's the whole networking thing. When I'm on LinkedIn, you can send me a connection too, by the way, if I want to connect with you, which is most everybody. Cool with that. And then also restate the question. So it gives you a little time to reflect it, a little reflective listening, and then answer it. Maintain eye contact with the entire audience. So don't look at the questioner. look at everybody as you answer. Does everybody see that? You're in public speaking. A lot of people, you'll see this. They'll only look and talk to the person the question came from. But there's everybody else is sitting there listening, right? It's like, yo, you keep the audience, right, involved. Even the question comes from one person. So you answer to everybody. Keep your answers short. If you did a good job with your speech, you answered everything already, right? So your answers should be short. And then you don't know sometimes, although if you're prepared, that doesn't happen to you. Smile, makes you look confident, prepared, remember, and calm, cool, and collected. And control the audience. Don't let them, barrage you with questions. One at a time. Don't let people get angry, upset, and you can always leave and end it. So that's a good way to control the audience. So some tips about your informal speeches. Include some statistics. If you don't have any, I'll take off some points for content. Verbally cite all your sources. Use the evidence 3-step. What's the author for all your sources? What's the publisher? What's the date? And then ideally, a little bit of information about your author. Just Google them, by the way. You can see where they went to school, what their comps, where they work, what they've been recognized for, and why they're really, really famous, right? Does anybody know about Dr. Sanjay Gupta? He's been the medical correspondent on CNN for like 25 years. He actually works at, he lives in Atlanta, Georgia, which is why he ended up being the CNN medical director for so long. And then he became a 60 Minutes reporter, investigator, but he was doing his medical work there and kind of was interfering with his career. So he kind of just does it now. And he's a really intelligent, experienced, fair guy. And one of the things I'm going to tell you about him is that if you're going to cite him, you should mention that he's one of the most recognized medical experts in the world, right? And his experience and resume backs it up. But what's really interesting is they asked him about medical marijuana about 12 years ago, and he said, "Oh, hell no." And then about 4 years ago, due to his CNN investigative reports, where he did a big thing about medical marijuana and girls and little boys and girls who have seizures and were using it as medicine, and he changed his whole mind about medical marijuana. And then he kind of looked at why he used to be against it and investigated those studies that he had relied his medical opinion upon, found out they were really bogus, like most of them. Now he's totally a medical marijuana advocate. And 12, 13 years ago, he was staunchly against it. But he actually talks about how he was misled. A lot of doctors the research that we were given is really misleading. Like one of them was famous, like they had this study where they gave rats like marijuana, like joints, like 20 of them every day for like a month, and they all got basically died, right? They had all these bad side effects, and they were like, yeah, marijuana is really, really bad for you, right? And they didn't die of the THC, they slowly died of other things, right? Because THC overdose really can't happen to you as a human being. Unlike alcohol, tobacco, nicotine, and a lot of other substances like opiates, which kill 70,000 Americans per year, much higher than even the suicide rate of veterans. So include studying visual aids, about 10 to 12 in your slideshow, and a simple, uncluttered, easy to read, see text and slides, right? So make sure the font is big enough and easy to read, right? As an audience member when you put it on the screen. And remember to use slideshow full screen presentation though. Use HTML links on your slides, like my examples. So go through my sample slideshows, and you'll see that I use HTML links. And by the way, how do you make an HTML link in Canvas? You copy and paste the link, and then press Enter or space after the link, and it turns into a blue clickable link. All right, so you create those, and so that when your slideshow, you can click the links to all your original research, right? And that's a great way to have a lot of credibility, because you're basically like saying all my research is verifiable with a click, right? Think about how that convenient that is. So that's awesome. Use transition slides and language. We talked about that earlier, right? Moving here, numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3. Follow me over to point number 3. That wraps up point number 1. Let's move on to point number 2. And use transition slides. If you watch like my Navy SEALs one, I have SEALs in motion as my transition slides between the intro to the first main point to the second main point to the third main point to the conclusion. So you have 4 outlines built into the outline template that we've been using, right? So 4 transitions, so 4 transition slides, 4 times to use transitional language, and 4 times to actually move your feet or move your body or do some transitional device where you might hand a pen to the left and grab it from the right and say, "Thank you, Peter," right? Or something like that. You've seen those little devices that you can kind of do. Discuss the pros and the cons. It's an informative speech, right? So make sure you're giving all the information, you're balanced, right? I just want to make sure you don't do a persuasive speech. I've seen a lot of students, they're like really persuasive with their information. I'm like, this is not an informative speech, right? You basically were persuading me. And the assignment is to inform. So understand the difference between being persuasive and informative, and stay informative, right? Sometimes there are no pros to something like drug addiction. So it's more of like why and how it happens, right? Does everybody see that? Is the interesting question, as opposed to like, what are the actual pros to, like cigarette smoking? No, mostly they buy a lot of cigarettes and pay a lot of taxes, and those taxes help our governments a lot. That's one pro, right? So they die, but they feed the government through cigarette and alcohol taxes. What's the most commonly raised tax in America? Cigarette and alcohol taxes, right? Because we don't care about those taxpayers, right? Have great ethos, which means credibility, right? Which is competence of your subject matter. You really want to sound like you know what you're talking about, and the content, right? So great ethos, and cite sources to show people I know what I'm talking about because I did research, and here are my sources. Here's the facts, the studies, the 6 expert quotes, but here are the sources for that, right? Here are the links you can click and verify and take you right to the original internet source. I'm going to show you my sample slideshow real quickly as an example. So if I go over to formative speeches again, you can click my sample slideshow, which is Google Slides about the US Navy SEALs. Oops, let me click it. And every chance I got to do an HTML link for my sources, they're here. Again, see numbered name points. Number 1, incomplete sentences, and a nice title slide, attention getter, and then you see the HTML link at the bottom if you want to see where I got the statistic. Point number 1, again, where I got the data, HTML link from the NavySeals.com. This one didn't work, the USNavySeals.com. It wasn't a specific URL. I generalized up the whole website. Then again, San Diego Union Tribune.com, specific HTML link for where I got this article, statistic quote, actually, sorry. BusinessInsider.com, HTML link. The book Downrange from Dick Couch, published in 2006. Quora.com, HTML link. These are the casualty statistics for Navy SEALs. And this was probably, I did this speech about 5, 6 years ago. So I'm gonna guess this, so the data is a little older. History.com for when we killed Osama bin Laden. This is my transition slide of the SEAL swimming, because they're always going to go to the water whenever they can. That's what really defines a SEAL, right? They're swamps, oceans, rivers, lakes, underwater, diving, basically they have to go through drown proofing in basic training. So they're literally learn how to not drown, even if their hands and legs are tied together, and hold their breath for long periods of time. Okay, so very few HTML links. CBS Evening News HTML link here too. Profiteering HTML link here. NewYorker.com HTML link, and then I'm done. And then finally the conclusion, NavySealFoundation.org. And if you count, how many did I have in my informative speech? How many sources and link and verbal source citations? Does everybody notice that as an example? I think there's 13. Right? So like I did a lot of research. You should do the same for your informative speech, right? Can't go wrong. And you know what else? If you're a nervous public speaker, how can you still get a good grade on the speech? Do a lot of research and then cite the sources, right? And show me like, I'm not the best deliverer, but I'll make the content kick ass. That I can control, right? I'm not nervous doing research and building a slideshow, right? Hopefully. So does everybody get that? Great opportunity to say, okay, I'm not the best speaker yet, but I'm gonna get an A if I do work hard on this assignment nonetheless. And I can do a lot of research and then verbally cite all those sources that I did and show the professor I worked really hard on the speech. Okay. Close strong. Make sure the ending of your speech is good, is strong. It's not just peters out. saying thank you, right? Skipping a lot of stuff in the conclusion. Have a good attention getter. You can do things in this speech you can't do when you're speaking impromptu because it's spontaneous, right? So think about, I can really prepare this attention getter. I want one word that's fantastic. So like, what am I going to do? And then total sources, I'm looking for 5 or 6 or more. My sample PowerPoint slide had 13 of them. A lot of them were HTML links. And then have fun with the speech. That's what I would tell you. Have a lot of fun. Apply what you've learned and choose a topic that you're excited to share with the audience, right? So, and I really like topics, informal speech topics that are fun or fun to tell, right? Or like, scary stories, which might be kind of fun. You can do an informal speech about like the Winchester Mystery House. I think that's great. Everyone loves a good ghost story. There are a lot of famous haunted houses in the world too. Chapter 9. We're going to talk about this one on so chapter 9. So it's persuading your audience. When we get to ethos, pathos, and logos, Aristotle's three persuasive proofs, really relevant to all public speaking, but this is more focused on persuasion, which again, you can do if you want to do a group speech topic that's persuasive. So speech is the power to persuade and to convert and to compel. That's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Ralph was telling you that speech persuasion power is like a superhero power. You can really do unbelievable, crazy things with it, right? So persuade, we understand what that means. But to convert is really, really hard. I mean, think about converting religion, right? Or converting political party, or converting your citizenship. It's rare. It's really rare that people do these kind of things, right? So very powerful that if your words can convert people, and some people are good at that, by the way. And then you can even make people feel compelled, which means that they will like follow your orders, right? They'll do what you say because they believe in you so much. You're so charismatic, right? I think a lot of Trumpers, they're really like, they're under kind of this compulsion thing for him, right? Real MAGA people, by the way, into his cult of personality, not just people who voted for him. But, I know a lot of people voted for him, but they don't like him at all personally, right? I was actually reading in the state of Utah, if Trump ran again in 2024, he won the state by a huge majority in 2020, but that in 2024, a lot of Utah people have gotten tired of him, and they like the conservative policies that he represents, but they don't like him. So just kind of an example of how like it's not always, a Trumper, just because you voted for Trump doesn't mean you're totally into Donald Trump. I think that's an important distinction to understand, because I know some of my liberal friends, they hold it against you if you voted for him. I'm like, no, just, like people have really different opinions about a lot of different things. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be friends. So, and you want to understand their side and vice versa, by the way. And if you're not friends, we'll never get to that point, right? So persuasion is the process of trying to get others to change their beliefs and behavior. So again, process, there's no beginning and end. It could be trillion steps. Like I want the process. I want to persuade people to have world peace. That's a process that probably may never finish. Just understanding my personal opinion about human nature. We're pretty violent. We're pretty selfish. And even though we're in the 21st century, we still have war and terrible things that people do to each other. So I'm just like, but I have some hope. My personal hope is that we go to outer space, and I think once we do that, we'll stop looking at ourselves as like Chinese, Russians, or Americans, but we'll all just be Earthlings, and we'll have common unity, like global problems to focus on instead of national problems, because we'll be dealing with the entire galaxy and universe now, right? And trying to colonize the Mars and the moon, and start mining out there, because we need a lot of good stuff in outer space because it's a limited supply on Earth, and some other things. Yeah, so the telescope is badass, by the way. If you don't have an informative speech topic, talk about the new telescope. It's incredible. It is. I think it's the most amazing technological feat and achievement in human history so far. If you understand, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of it. It replaced the old Hubble telescope. It's also another guy's name, and it's just how it's taking pictures and how it got up there, and it was sent by a rocket, and how many things could go wrong. So this all would have been a big, huge waste of money. But it's all worked out pretty well. The Mars rovers have also been awesome technological innovations as well. Besides that, probably nuclear weapons. Okay, so it's a process, and then you're trying. You're not actually, so you don't have to succeed to be persuasive in your persuasion. You're just trying, and you're trying to change beliefs or behavior. All right, so okay, what am I trying to say in this visual aid? There's this man and a woman on a couch. You notice the couch is different. right? It's lighting. It's a very subtle play on this visual aid. So what am I trying to emphasize about persuasion here? Can anybody figure this out? What am I trying to say? Because there's no words. It's a visual aid. It's two-dimensional. So that's a big clue, right? There's no, you can't hear anything. You just see, right? So what am I trying to tell you about persuasion? Just type the answer in the chat. Yeah. That's the answer. You need to know that for the final exam, right? She's touching him. What she's wearing, her hair's down, her posture, her facial expression, right? It's very seductive. And again, you see all of that is nonverbal. So who said this? The power which has always started the greatest religious and political avalanche in history has been the magic power of the spoken word, and that alone. Unlike Ralph Waldo Emerson, this person realized that speech has a lot of power, like magic power, right? And the person who said this was, anybody want to guess? I teach you the Socratic method, which is why I ask students questions, but then if they don't answer, it's not really Socratic going on, right? It's kind of like I'm talking to myself, but that's cool. If you want to make, the class less interesting, that's your prerogative. So yeah, what's this guy? And he did that. All right, so 9.1, let's talk about the basics of persuasion. There are 3 purposes. So number 1 is let's reinforce an already held belief, right? Like everyone should follow the law. I think generally everyone believes that, right? And I'm not talking about speeding and traffic laws, but really just, generally following what the laws in our country say, right? So even though I'm pro-choice, the fact that there's no Roe versus Wade, I'm going to follow the law. So if I'm in, I don't know, Ohio, or I'm trying to figure out what other states pretty much banned abortion completely. But Ohio definitely comes to mind. And I want to say like maybe Mississippi also comes to mind, but I think they did 15 weeks. They didn't do a complete ban. Or maybe Texas, right? Something like that. Where like in those states, yeah, you got to follow the law. I'm not going to be like, I'm not a doctor, but I would not like go there and break the law just to give abortions, just like, fight protest. Although I did hear of this one Bay Area doctor, she wants to buy a boat, like a ship, and sail around, and because as long as you're in the ocean off the coast, 1.5 miles, you're in international waters, and then people could come out to her boat and where she could do abortion procedures free, without theoretically legal liability and breaking the state's laws, right? But then there's this big thing about trying to restrict people from traveling to a state with abortion from a state that doesn't allow it. And then if you saw, Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, Republican, said we need to revisit the gay marriage Supreme Court decision. It's wrong. So they want to get rid of that whole Supreme Court constitutional right to gay marriage. And some states are trying to ban birth control. That's freaking weird to me. Like, you want people to have sex. That's just always been human nature. But you want them to, every time they have sex, they could pop out kids. I don't think that's a good idea for a lot of reasons. I don't even think Americans should have kids. We should have a license. Right, you have to have a license to drive. You have to have a license to like do a bunch of other stuff. I would kind of wonder, like, why don't you need a license to be a parent? That's like the biggest obligation in the world. Yeah, okay. A parenting license would be interesting. Just some parenting classes. How to feed it, how the kid, and basic development stuff, and getting resources, because if you don't know a lot about babies, because your parents aren't there to help or something like that, you're going to need, you need to be educated. I had a lady in class, she had a 9-month-old. She told me she would give it Coke and Pepsi, and I was just like, I was like, look into this, you shouldn't do that, like, milk, baby formula, some other things. And then she told me, she's like, oh my God, I had no idea I was doing such a bad thing to my kid. I had drink Pepsi, right? She just did what she knew. This is why you can't like criticize people for that, because they only know what they know, right? And you do what you know. But education is becoming harder in this country, right? People want you to be ignorant. Educated people are woke. I don't know if you saw, the Republicans hate woke people, like woke policies and stuff, all this stuff, right? Woke math. I don't know. I think everybody should be awake, right? You should be like aware of what's going on around you as a human being at all times. So, okay. So then number 2, let's change an audience belief. This is challenging. We should open the border with Mexico, right? So changing beliefs, like what you believe to be true or false, is pretty rare for most human beings, right? I believe in God. I don't believe in God, right? That people don't easily go go from those belief changes. So very challenging as a persuasive person. Number three is let's motivate to action. Let's lose weight. Let's exercise more. Let's get better sleep. Let's eat more vegetables, right? Or let's please contribute money or time to the charity. So now you're trying to motivate people. And this is actually maybe the most challenging because people know what they should do, but they don't want to, or they don't care, or they're not motivated enough to do it, right? So has anybody seen how do you get people to leave reviews? Because good reviews make a lot of money for a business, right? So like, does anybody notice like how to, or let's do H2, how to incentivize, like leaving reviews. Has anybody seen, what do people do? Like Amazon's, anybody ever, yeah, they'll be like, if you leave a good review, we'll give you a coupon. We'll give you, like, I've actually been sent like dollar bills in the mail where they just send you like 3 crisp $1 bills. And because the research says people will be like, well, damn, you already sent me money. Yeah, I'll go fill out this quick online survey or something like that. You have to incentivize it because a good review will make you a lot of money on your product or service down the restaurant, right? Especially for your restaurant, like on Yelp or Google or something like that. So, and if you want to be a good friend for your friends' businesses, you'll leave legitimate, accurate reviews for them that are positive, and it'll help their business tremendously. So, I've never looked at my ratemyprofessor.com, but sometimes students mention it to me, and I'm sure I get emails saying, I want to add your class, Professor Lee, because I looked you up on ratemyprofessor.com and it's, you seem like a good fit for me. So I'm just saying that people do use it, right? These ratings do matter. Reviews on the internet matter. People actually, if you didn't know, number one reason Amazon's successful is their review system. That when you buy their product untouched, unseen, you feel good with that because you can read so many reviews and questions about your product to see it. Like, for example, I was trying to buy some outdoor furniture the other day. I was looking at Costco, Wayfair.com, and Amazon. And one of the things I'm always looking for is because I live in South Lake Tahoe, it snows here. So we go through icy, snowy, wet winters. So I need my outdoor furniture, not like somebody in Florida or Texas. No, I need people who live in Minnesota who also go through hard winters. And I need the furniture that's going to survive that. So I'm looking through the reviews for people who talk about, yeah, I live somewhere where it's brutal in the wintertime and the furniture survives, right? Because it's not a real wicker, it's like a polyurethane wicker, and right, blah, blah, blah. Sorry. Reviews matter. Some motivation. So these are the 3 purposes. So ask yourself, if you're doing a persuasive speech, I'm persuading people to, like vote for, Republicans or vote for Democrats, right? And you got to think about, am I reinforcing already held belief? Well, no, because I'm trying to get a Republican to vote Democratic or a Democrat to vote Republican. Am I changing audience belief? Yeah. And then am I motivating people? Yeah, because I need people to go vote. And if you look at the voter turnout numbers, Americans are often not motivated to turn out to vote for whatever reason. I personally think voting should be duty. Like if you don't vote, we can kick you out of America. Like it's your citizen. It's like your one citizen thing you have requirement, right? That once a year you vote. And maybe we should make voting day a national holiday. So people don't even go to work, there's no school, and first Tuesday of every November, for example, or make it on 4th of July, right? I was like, yeah, we ought to get that day off. Like part of your patriotic duties to go and vote. Everybody casts a vote, right? And there are countries that have mandatory voting policies, by the way. There are actually a couple countries that do that. They're pretty small, but yeah, there you go. The proposition or claim. So this is the desired effect that we want to have on your audience, that you want to vote, or that you want to eat more vegetables, or you want to sleep better. So that's really your thesis statement in the outline. So the proposition should be 1 sentence long. So remember, thesis statement, 1 sentence long, no more. A poorly phrased proposition will actually hinder your efforts to organize and deliver an effective persuasive appeal. Remember, a thesis statement is just your purpose to inform, persuade, or entertain about your topic. All right. So I'm going to persuade you to eat pizza. I'm going to inform you about pizza. I'm going to entertain you about pizza, right? What did the pizza cutter say to the pizza slice? I'm going to, I'm just making up jokes, right? The eternal question for pizza. So pizza speech for me is always does pineapple belong on pizza? Anybody want to just type in their answer, yes or no? Pineapple on pizza. I'm a yes. I was born in Hawaii, so I've been eating pineapple on pizza my entire life. I was kind of weirded out that people thought that was weird. I was like, well, dude, I've seen like everything on pizza, like everything, pretty much. And I remember I was a little kid, it was a lot different. Anchovies were on all the combination pizzas. Nobody had chicken as an ingredient. It was just like sausage, beef, pepperoni, and salami, right? Like so the ingredients have really changed. And you didn't really have thick crust, Detroit, Chicago style versus New York style thin crust. It was just kind of like everyone just kind of had a crust, and yeah. So all right. Round Table and Pizza Hut are the two pizza chains I remember as a kid that are still around today. Otherwise, all the pizza's different, right? You got Maud, Blaze, Pizza My Heart, Domino's, leaving on a bunch of them, right? So, oh, actually, Domino's was kind of around when I was in college, at least I can remember that. So, okay, and they were the first really national delivery, and then Papa John. Okay. So, number one, so three things about your propositional claim. So, number one is your proposition should meet an audience need. You can sleep better, right? Like, or you need to sleep better, right? You need to sleep so you can sleep better. You should make the temperature 66 degrees. It should be dark. You should regularly sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time. You might wear a mask or earplugs, depending on the environment in which you sleep. And but dark, quiet, and cold is basically what you're looking for. And you generally want to try and go to bed every day. For me, I'd say 10 p.m. to like 7 a.m. is pretty reasonable because you want 8 to 9 hours per day, right? So, yeah, it's hard, by the way, right? And think about the things you have to sacrifice to get good sleep. You have to give up a lot of partying, late night binge watching TV shows, or playing video games. Doing any kind of night owl lifestyle, bad. One of my friends, he works the graveyard shift and just got shifted to the day shift. And I was telling him, I never told you this, but like, let's do some research. How bad is it to stay up all night? Like, really, for you? And I think you're going to be shocked to find out that it's like you're basically killing yourself. And that's not a good thing to do at all, right? So, how bad is a graveyard shift? So night shift work disrupts your body's circadian rhythms, which is why you fall asleep. You go through 3 or 4 rhythms per night, and then the last part of the rhythm is REM sleep, where you dream. You have a 24-hour internal clock that controls your sleep-wake cycle. This is through 100,000 years of human evolution, where most of the time when it was dark outside, humans slept because it was super dangerous, super scary, and so you didn't do anything at night, and that's why your body was just sleeping. That's why even though we have lights and lots of things to do at night, the human body is not caught up to me by, I mean, military is anti-sleep, right? Because they don't give a damn what time it is. In fact, a lot of times you want to do things at night and take advantage of our night vision, or the fact that other people are sleeping or not as aware, and just we have to have people work night shifts in certain jobs, like medical, but it's really bad for you. It's really, really bad. It increases your risk of diabetes, heart disease, obesity. Also said that when you eat at night, as many night shift workers do, you actually impair your body's ability to process sugar or glucose, which is why it contributes to diabetes. And then here you can see that it's, just interferes with sleep, and that causes massive side effects down the road, right? Just depression, you're tired, you're going to be moody, grumpy. You see more breast cancer, more heart attack, more depression. Here's news.medical.net for 2022, just because it's a medical website. I'm going to go here, right? You can just see that it causes just circadian rhythm and sleep problems. And you can't change that. That's the problem, right? No matter what you are as a human being, you cannot change your evolved circadian rhythms over 100,000 of years, even if you work on it all your life, right? And then the effects of night shifts on sleep, it just messes up your sleep. That causes psychological mental health issues. It also causes gastrointestinal system issues, metabolic disorders, cardiovascular system issues, and cancer. And this is all scientific research, right? So just, like, don't do it. I just can't emphasize it enough. I mean, how many of us pulled all-nighters because it was fun and it was exciting? I've had some really good friendships because you were like up all night with them. You saw the sunset, you were talking, you're really like connecting and getting deep. But I realized, like, I constantly tell my kids, like, you don't want it sounds cool, it seems fun, but it's really bad for your health. So don't like get your sleep. And as a women, I'm always for women, I always tell them get your beauty sleep, right? It's beauty sleep. Like sleep is not just important for y'all, but it stops aging compared to people who don't sleep and age and wrinkle a lot. So again, median audience need. Number two is your proposition should also be reasonable and realistic. So make sure it's not, asking too much, like donate $10,000 to this charity. No college students are going to be able to really afford this. So think about like, just come in and sign up, show up for our meeting and there's free pizza. By the way, free pizza is the best way to get people to show up to a new meeting. So if you're ever starting a new meeting, new club on campus, offer free pizza. And if you didn't know, it's easy to get free pizza. You just got to call like Domino's and tell them you're a college campus club organized official and you're having a party. Would you like to donate pizza to our meeting? And corporations need tax write-offs, so they totally will give out free pizza for charities, and you can get free pizza delivered to your first meeting to attract people if you kind of know how to finagle the system. When I was younger in college, you used to have to pay for long distance calling. So this is pre-cell phones, right? So like if you had a landline, you called long distance, that's your area code, it would cost like maybe like 20 cents a minute. So I used to actually walk into office buildings with like a suit and tie on and just ask the secretary if I could borrow their phone, and I would make all my long distance calls and then not pay for any of them. And they would always just assume like you work there because you ask with authority and you're dressed and you're just using the phone, no big deal for them. So yeah, it's just kind of a good example how you can finagle the system. I called all that stuff life hacks, by the way. I am a life hacker. I'm always looking for hacking life in any way possible to become more efficient, shortcuts, make things more convenient, save money. Absolutely. Total love the idea. Sometimes I think about making a big YouTube video about my life hacking like philosophy and all the different ways you can do it. And the point number three is your proposition should be nice and simple. Remember, KISS, keep it simple and short. So outline should be simple and short. And remember that your proposition, your thesis statement, purpose and topic, nice and simple. That's it. Don't put any other words in there. You're just making it harder to understand. Aristotle 3 persuasive proofs. With ethos, logos, and pathos. Here's Aristotle's bust, just if you're wondering what he looked like. Greek dude from many years ago. Ethos is credibility, trustworthiness. Logos is logic, and pathos is emotional appeals. Right, so good speakers are credible and trustworthy. They're very logical, and they use emotional appeals, which is really what gives you the magic power. Right, so like, okay. So ethos, credibility. You ask yourself questions like, do you believe and trust the speaker? Yes, then they have ethos. No, no ethos. Does the speaker know what they're talking about? Are they competent on the subject matter? Yes, then they have ethos. No, they don't have ethos. And does the person demonstrate character and goodwill? Yes, ethos. No, no ethos. I assess ethos with everybody I meet. I'm like, do I trust this person? Do I believe what they tell me about who they are, where they're from, what job they do? Are they bragging, exaggerating, or just lying, or trying to mislead me for some reason? Do they know what they're talking about when it comes to their subject matter, right? Like, you can hear me talk about Naruto or Naruto, and you can tell that I don't know anything about it. I just know it's an anime show, and he's a character. I think he has a brother, something like that. Does a person demonstrate character and goodwill? You tend to trust people who seem like they're good people. I'll give you a good example. Let's say Derek, you found out that in the military, he started like a nonprofit charity to help like homeless vets. And he spends tons of money and time on this charity. What would you think about Derek if we knew this about him? We don't think he's a good guy. We tend to trust him, right? So people who just demonstrate good character, personality traits like trustworthiness and loyalty, and whatever, discretion, and then goodwill. It's just you're cheerful and nice to other people around you, right? That tends to make you much more credible. Which, by the way, that's what bad guys use to look like they have ethos when they don't, right? And then mislead you, right? Like if you remember serial killer Ted Bundy, he would often prey on people who had goodwill. So he would break over his van on the side of the road, and then usually put a cast or sling on, a fake one, to look like he was injured. So that he had car trouble, and he's like injured in a medical injury that's obvious, and that he's struggling and that's why people will pull over, offer help to him, and he would victimize them because they would put their guard down, right? Because he looked like he was medically injured, needing help on the side of the road. He can't be a serial killer right? And you see that. So some people, they'll try to make you trust them by showing character and goodwill. That's false. But generally, if we, oh my God, Tequila, yeah, that guy sucks. And I think it's Gacy, if I remember correctly, not Gracie, but yeah, he was the clown killer. And remember, he raped, murdered little boys, and yeah, that guy sucks. By the way, I don't even like saying his name just for that. I just call him the evil clown killer guy, right? Just because serial killers kill to get famous. So as a personal philosophy, and because my classes, serial killers are often pretty popular topics for speeches. So I advocate, like, let's not say their name, even though I said Ted Bundy's, but you see why I said it? Because I want you to know who I was talking about. But I would just call them the murderer or the gunman or the serial killer, right? Just like, let's give them no name. So that way, maybe we can stop glorifying them, and then some serial killers don't want to be killers anymore because they want the glory, right? So yeah, Eduardo, I'm just curious, what are you referring to for the clown sightings? Because I have a couple of things on maybe you're talking about. You're just talking about a murder case, or because John Wayne Gacy was like 50, 60 years ago, I think. So, evil now. When I was a little kid, clowns were kind of fun. Then clowns have slowly become kind of evil. So like the menacing instead of like a circus fun clown. It's kind of interesting, right? So, and then you also want to understand that the ethos is the most important of the three proofs, right? Most important because it gets your foot in the door. It's a precondition to listening. You people you don't trust and don't believe in, right? So internet connection is unstable. Still on the Wi-Fi, right? If it drops out, I apologize again. So try and fix it. I'll go back to my Wi-Fi router at home, see if that's better. So if you have important news to share with people, but they don't trust you, they'll listen to what you have to say. Right? That's why we call it the most important of the three proofs. Because without it, people don't listen. So all speakers at minimum need credibility. They need ethos, right? That people are listening to you because they believe what you're saying and tend to trust what you're telling them, right? So, or you definitely know what you're talking about. You're an expert in the field, or you demonstrate a lot of character and goodwill, and they're listening to you because they feel like you're a good person and therefore you're trustworthy, right? So get your foot in the door. People knock on the door, they don't answer the door if they don't trust you, right? Anybody here? What happens when a telemarketer calls their phone? It's usually weekdays at dinner time because they're in your home. They don't call on weekends, by the way. People know that they don't always answer, right? So you get his number, and what do a lot of people do when telemarketers call? They ignore it. You don't even answer it. You don't know what they have to say because you don't trust them. You don't answer the phone, right? So again, ethos makes people open the door, so you get your foot in the door, or at least they answer the phone, so you can tell them what you're about, and then they can hang up on you if they don't like what you're saying or not interested, right? So an ethos in Greek means ethical. So what does it mean to be an ethical speaker? You want to be truthful, right? You don't want to be like Peter who cried wolf. You have a reputation for lying. People don't believe you, then they won't, listen to what you have to say. So be truthful. Also share your motives. Why are you talking to this boy or girl? To get their number and date them, or you're just trying to meet somebody else, or you're just networking? You're just kind of you're bored. You're entertaining yourself at this party, bar, or club, or you just want to be friends, right? Or it's just small talk. It's nothing. Are you trying to sell somebody something or not? I'll give you a great example. I had a family invite me over for dinner one time, me and my wife, and they had children. And we didn't know them very well. We kept meeting them at Mountain View at, what's the name of that park? Holy schmoly. It's near St. Francis High School and the YMCA. Wow. Anyhow, sorry, I forgot the name of the park. They're like, hey, do you want to get together for dinner Friday night? And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So me and my wife, we get a babysitter, they get a babysitter, right? And it's a social event. And we come to their house, instead of having dinner, they like sell us Tupperware. So what was their real motive for inviting us to their house? It was to sell us plastic from China. It was not to be social and to become friends. We thought we were having dinner to become social and become friends, right? So does everybody see how they misled us with their motive? And we felt very like, we don't want to ever talk to you again. No, that was not cool. Third, establish common ground. Connect with people over what you have in common. We like the same sports team. We like the same bands or music. We like to eat the same food. We drive the same car. We play like the same video games. We both have the Xbox, not a sucky PlayStation. Sorry, I don't exactly know the console wars. Does Nintendo Switch count, by the way? I don't know. And then, and just, yeah, I'm a people person. I talk to people all the time. And what I try and do is always figure out what we have in common. I've been to where you grow up. We know something about your college, something about your job. We know common people. Again, we have sports interests, hobby interests, children, family interests. You know, like we both like to boat, kayak, ski, mountain bike. I remember my ex-wife said, "You're so easy." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" She's like anybody who like mountain bikes, you're best friends with them. If they ski or snowboard, then you're like best friends with them. And if they like, you know, like go do anything outdoors, you're like best friends with them. I was just like, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. Life is easy for me because I like all those people who do all those things a lot, and I can spend a lot of time with them and hang out with them. And now I don't always want to intellectualize with them because I did find out people who are outdoorsy are fun to hang out with in the outdoors, but maybe indoors can be really, really boring, right? Just not that intellectual or really into partying or girls or boys and just, you know, drama stuff. I'm like, I don't care about that kind of stuff. I want to talk about Bitcoin or inflation or, you know, Russia-Ukrainian war and the long-term kind of global repercussions of that, because it is going to globally affect us for a long time. What's happening in Ukraine? Food, they grow a lot of the world's grain and wheat. Again, oil supply chain issues are being disrupted. And there's a bunch of stuff on in Europe as a result as well. And wow, I don't know if you saw, but England got 40 degrees Celsius the other day. Talk about global warming. England is freaking cold and rainy, overcast. So when they have 40 degrees Celsius days, by the way, 40 degrees Celsius is some insane Fahrenheit. I don't know the translation. I'm just going to do it real quickly. I'll ask. Just go Celsius to Fahrenheit. So 40 degrees Celsius is multiplied by 1.8 and add 32. So 1.8 times 40 is 40 times 0.8, 332, 72, add 104 degrees. That's freaking hot in England. I'm telling you, I've actually lived in England for a while. That's insane. I bet you nobody has air conditioning in England, like anywhere. So like, yeah, they're not prepared for this kind of crazy weather. Oops.
Telecommunications.
Oops. Stop to start a speech.
Now, and I'm here to
hold on a second here.
What about Egypt? So
okay. Let me go back to my Zoom meeting and share screen. Back to the ethos. So and dress appropriately. Dress for success, dress to impress. People do judge you on the way you appear. And so dressing appropriately does go into credibility. Like I said, people treat you with a lot more respect when you're well dressed. How do you increase speaker ethos? Don't be Joan Jett, where she has a famous song saying, "I don't give a damn about my bad reputation." But public speakers, we have to care a lot about our reputation. That's ethos. So research your audience, consider your audience, chapter 4. What are they interested in? What's their audience? What's their knowledge level? What are their demographics? And you can kind of figure out your audience is this, therefore I can do this to be credible with them, right? My example would be, I'm talking to like 12-year-old kids. They don't really care about grown-ups, in my impression, but I can actually be credible with them if knowing them, I'll bring up like maybe a video game like Among Us, or I'll bring up, you know, Minecraft, or Counter-Strike, or some of the video games. There's a bunch of video games I don't even know the name of. They change so fast, right? Kind of what's been like. I played some World of Warcraft, Counter-Strike, Quake. Oh, and shoot, what's the other Blizzard Activision game where you're rushing? There's like the Borg, then the alien guys, and the humans, the Terrans. Spacecraft? I can't even remember. So there you go. Yeah, I could tell you about my Atari. I actually do remember that game, like the very first video game system ever, where you played like asteroids and this game where like the nuclear missiles came down, you had to shoot them all to protect your bases or something. And really simple like 1-bit graphics or something. Okay, so figure out who your audience is and figure out what you can do to be credible with them, right? What can you say or do to be credible with them? Thanks, StarCraft, yeah. Which I remember, John, a lot of Koreans are really, really good at, because I played at like a PC bong in Korea one time, and yeah, I think some like 10-year-old schooled me like 20 times in a row. I was like, I almost had a nerd rage fit about it. They're really good. I was like, this is not cool. Like, I'm kind of meticulous the way I play StarCraft, and they were just like rushing me. I was like, little fucking 10-year-olds, punks. Right. It's frustrating as an adult to lose a 10-year-old kid in a video game. It is. I mean, they're really good too. It's not like, right. If you don't know, yeah, StarCraft, they said it was like an addiction in Korea, South Koreans for a while. They're like, maybe, was that 15, 20 years ago? Maybe. I want to say it was before law school for me. So let's say late 90s. All right. Connect with your audience before the speech. So come early, arrive early and mingle and talk, give high fives, meet people, ask them where they're from, like mingle. It's a really good social skill. It builds a lot of credibility, right? Before you even start speaking. Dress up, dress for success, dress to impress, arrive early and mingle so you can connect with your audience. Remember, shake a lot of hands, kiss a lot of babies. Touch is a great power there. Be respectful in your delivery. Your audience should be ladies and gentlemen. Nothing else. You can call them you guys. Some ladies get offended by that. I've seen you all, they're like, we're not Southerners. And so just ladies and gentlemen. Right. And fast audience is to disrespect your audience, right? Offend them. Be the last to leave. That gives you time to again mingle after your speech. Shake a lot of hands, kiss a lot of babies. Again, touch is a good social skill. Touch makes your interactions real for people, right? So, and then express your gratitude. After your speech is over, thank them for attending the speech, right? Not as the last closing statement of your speech. Logos, page 145, 146. So is the speaker's reasoning sound? So what this means is that I make decisions in life logically, and I weigh the costs of them and the benefits. And one of the costs you should always understand is the opportunity cost. Like I'm going to take the family to Maui this summer in August. And one of the opportunity costs of Maui is that we can't go to other places because we're choosing to go to Maui. Of the amount of the time and the resource commitment, right? So part of understanding the cost of going to Maui is that, we can't go to Brazil. We can't, because there's other cool beaches we could go to, right? A lot of places in Mexico, Jamaica, the Caribbean, other Pacific islands. I would love to take the fam to Thailand one day. My dad and I went there, and Bangkok and Thailand, it was amazing. I just had a culturally mind-opening life experience spending like 4 weeks there. And my dad he's a Vietnam vet, so he'd actually been to Bangkok a few times in the late 60s and 70s, and so he knew his ways around. He actually can even speak some Cambodian and Thai and do the little, I think it's Buddhist greeting with everybody and stuff. So like that was super useful because people loved him because he could like communicate a little bit better than a lot of other people could too, right? He knew the traditions and things like that. Okay. There are two types of reasoning. So yeah, employ a lot of cost benefit analysis to making your decisions in life. I think it's a great way to make decisions. It doesn't always result in the best decision, but the way you make decisions is sound, right? It's logical. It's not full of arbitrary randomness, right? So you consistently use cost benefit analysis to make decisions. I think you'll be very happy with your decisions in life overall. Sometimes you don't have all the information though about what the true costs are or what the true benefits are, right? They're hard to know before you make a decision sometimes, right? Like I can't predict really, like how something's going to be super fun for me until you go and do it, right? So you don't completely understand until you've been there, right? Like, oh, that was life-changing. I rode elephants in Thailand. That was cool. You just don't get to do that in America, like a lot of places in the world, right? We went to Cambodia and we went to Angkor Wat. That was life experience. I've actually been to all the pyramids. I've been to the Mayan and Aztec pyramids. I've been to Egypt and the pyramids of Giza. My parents took me there, and then my dad took me to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. So it's really cool that I can say that because they're trippy. Like the amount of human suffering and work that went in to build these things is pretty mind-blowing. And then the fact that they survived thousands of years, right? So, okay. So deductive reasoning is a syllogism. It is where a syllogism is made up of a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. So an example of a syllogism would be major premise, all humans are mortal. Yeah, elephants are disappearing too. Did you read the story that an elephant trampled this woman to death because she did something that upset it, and then it actually found her grave site and went and trampled her grave? And they were talking about how the elephants have super crazy good memories. I was like, that is trippy. That is really, really trippy, right? That it trampled her grave. I was like, that is fascinating, right? Yeah, the elephant that held a grudge, right? So I try not to hold grudges. It causes humans to do bad stuff, in my opinion, and makes you dark because it's kind of a revenge thing. I just think I found revenge, even though it's justified and can feel good, it's not good for life, for yourself, in the overall big picture. So, but every once in a while, it's appropriate. I do believe that, right? Like on the sports field, like where things, it's fair, kind of fun to get revenge as opposed to like escalating something. Does that make sense, right? So, minor premise will be Peter is mortal. So all humans are mortal. That's the major premise. Minor premise, Peter is mortal. Therefore, I can conclude that all humans are mortal. Peter is human. I must also be mortal. And that's true. I will die one day. So syllogisms or deductive reasoning fail when you have a major premise or a minor premise that is false, right? So I'll give you an example. Major premise, all people who go to church believe in God. Minor premise, Mary goes to church. Conclusion, Mary believes in God, right? But the first major premise, that all people who go to church believe in God, is not true. I don't believe in God, but I go to church sometimes on Easter, at Christmas, when my friends invite me. And it's just, I'll be polite. And I don't mind church, by the way. Even though I don't believe what they're saying to me a lot, I think there are a lot of good things out of church. Community, you make a lot of good friendships and relationships with people, I think, who are not similar to you, but just in their faith are similar. So you get a broad spectrum and diverse group of people you can hang out with. When I was little, I only went to Korean church with my parents, English service, but I like going to multicultural, multi-diverse churches in the Bay Area. I think it's kind of cool to see all the groups of people mixing together to worship, even though I don't believe in any of that still too. And the more I look at the pictures from the telescope, the more I am atheist, by the way. I was serious. I was looking at those pictures, reading articles about the universe and the galaxies, and it basically seems time travel. Because remember, when you're seeing light that far away, it takes billions of years for that light, so that you can constantly like time travel, right? Like at nighttime, when you see a star, the light you're seeing from that star could be a billion years old. That's how long it took to get to Earth from that star, and that star could have supernovaed and died, but we don't know that yet because we're still seeing the light that's taking millions of years to get to us, right? So by the time the star blows up and that light stops ending and gets to us, it's already passed. Millions of years have already passed, right? And that is try and wrap your brain around that, and that's why I'm an atheist. That's just my personal philosophy. Don't listen to me about that. I'm not trying to influence you, persuade you in any way. I'm just showing you my process and my line of thinking. And I actually went to church every Sunday in my life until I was 18. My parents, and I remember that, never missed. We didn't do anything. Like we would go to Tahoe. I got to ski on Saturday, church on Sundays though. Then maybe skiing afterwards. And that was just something my parents were really big about. I remember we would go on vacation, and it was Sunday. We would go find some random church. It doesn't matter, Catholic, on Sundays, we got to go to church. And so that's one reason I actually got to see lots of different churches and religions, because when we were traveling, we had to get to church on Sundays. And so we would visit a lot of random churches, and and the people were always friendly. Where are you visiting from? And I still get mail. My parents would put their name and address on the guest list for the church. And like 30 years later, those churches still mail my parents and me stuff because we're still on the mailing list. So it's pretty incredible, right? Incredible. Organized religion has some outreach, but organized religion scares the hell out of me, by the way. Personal religion, I'm very cool with. It's the whole church, and they tell you what to think and what to do. Like that's where things get dark. Okay. So inductive reasoning is the opposite of deductive reasoning. It's more you go from little to big, and deductive reasoning kind of goes from top down or big to small reasoning. So is Asian. Peter's good at math. Therefore, all Asians are good at math. And that's an example of inductive reasoning. I take one person, experience or example, and then generalize to the whole about it, right? And that's why we say, is it stereotyping? And is it overgeneralization? My friend Juan is Mexican. Juan loves tacos. Therefore, is it fair for me to generalize that all Mexicans love tacos? Or how about this one? Juan's Mexican. Juan loves soccer. Therefore, all Mexicans love soccer. So you can see that that's what inductive reasoning is. It can be fraught with error, but it is based in some truism, right? Because if you ask Mexicans generally whether they like tacos or soccer, the answer is going to be yes, right? But how you apply the generalization to an individual can be very, very stereotyping and very offensive. So, which is more common? Inductive reasoning. We tend to be very simplistic and love to generalize from one experienced person or thing and place and just generalize from it. Right. So we tend to think inductively, but the superior form of reasoning is deduction, where we employ syllogisms, right? And the most famous deductive reasoning person of all time is Sherlock Holmes. So we talked earlier about association is a good way to remember stuff. So remember Sherlock Holmes and deduction to help you remember deduction, right? The example, by the way, is Sherlock Holmes shows up and he sees this dead woman, and there's all these cops around trying to figure out what happened. And he looks at her, ring finger, and then says, I've deduced what happened. And all the cops are like, oh my God, and Bobbies are like, oh my God, Mr. Holmes, explain. And he says that the woman's dad is married, and I looked at her wedding ring, it's scuffed up. How do you scuff up a wedding ring in 1820s Victorian England? There's only one way, because married women never took their rings off. So why would you be scuffing up your ring and taking it off a lot if you're a married woman in 1820s England? You were having an affair. So he deduces that she was having an affair, and therefore she got killed by either the lover or the husband. She either broke it off and stayed with the husband, or broke it off with the husband and stayed with the affair person. That person got jealous and killed her. And that was his deduction for what had happened to her. And it's a good example of major premise. Yeah, you only scuff up your ring if you're taking it off. Women don't take off their wedding ring unless they're cheating. So that's how you scuff it up. Therefore, that must be the motive for the killing. It doesn't guarantee the killing and who the killer was, but it definitely can figure out probably why she's dead, right? And then that leads you to who. All right. So deductive reasoning is superior, but inductive reasoning is by far and away more common. Tips. How do you become more logical? Well, number one, document your statistics orally. So cite your sources for all your data, your statistics especially, right? Where your quantitative numeric data. Number two, and remember that's the evidence-based step. Number two, let's build the ethos of your sources and authors. Yeah, tell us why your sources and authors are more credible and trustworthy than any other else, right? Somebody's doing a speech about black hole theory, brings up Stephen Hawking. I'm going to mention that Stephen Hawking is the most brilliant black hole physicist we've ever had in the history of humanity. So his opinions on this topic matter more than anybody else's by a lot, right? So, or I might explain, hey, one of my sources is just really, really, really experienced, has won a lot of awards for their recognition in journalism, right? Or their research, right? Like won a Pulitzer Prize or something like that. I do that by Googling the authors, figure out who they are. And if there's something special about them, I try to mention that when I use them as a source in my speech. Number three, I've actually had speakers dedicate author source information. It looked terrific because it really put an emphasis on good sources. Number three, give an adequate amount of evidence of expertise in statistics, right? People believe in lots of proof, right? If I tell you to go watch the new Thor movie, you may go. If your friends tell you to go watch the Thor movie, you're probably going to go. And then if everybody you meet is like, you got to go watch the new Thor movie, I heard it was okay, by the way, then you're probably going to go, right? So the more variety or more evidence showing you that something is true tends to be very, very persuasive, right? Number four, provide quality evidence. It's trustworthy, it's accurate, it's recent. Remember, usdebtclock.org, it can be real time and relevant evidence. Make sure it matters, right? That it's relevant to the issue, right? Do you think that was it relevant that the Uvalde gunman got kicked out of his house, his parents' house, about like a year ago? That's why he was living with his grandma, who he shot on his way to the school before he shot and killed all the kids, right? Do you think that's relevant? Yeah, I think most people would say that's relevant, right? Like his whole environment, upbringing, how do you create? You know what's really sad? His freaking nickname in high school was school shooter. basically, the kids picked on him, said he was weird, blah, 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 and nicknamed him the school shooter. Fucking kids. You helped make him a school shooter by labeling him that, right? Does everybody see that? Yeah, that's because my sister, not my sister, my older daughter will criticize my son because he's 3.5 years younger. So he's just more immature, doesn't know as well things in life. So every time he does something wrong, she loves to point it out, right? That's not how you spell it. That's not what it is. And I was always like, you got to stop with that because I know you're right, but by belittling him constantly, you're going to speak it into existence that he feels like inferior to you. I was like, you got to stop correcting him. That's my job as a parent, right? And she's been more sensitive to it. But yeah, she like for a while, she was always telling him, you need therapy. I was like, you better fucking stop saying that. Because if he goes to therapy because of that, I'm not gonna take it out on you. And so she did, like, I think she understood that one completely. So she tries to not say that one at all, right? But it's like, they fight a lot, by the way. Almost 11-year-old and 7-year-old. And like, yeah, they just, I really bums me out as dad. I'm like, you guys should love each other. So, but I do know a lot of brothers and sisters. They didn't think they were cool until they were like high school or college age kids, right? Because you're just the annoying little brother for a long time. So, so I get it. Yeah. And by the way, you can speak things into existence. Remember chapter 2 about visualizing success? You can speak your terrible speaking experience to be terrible into existence. You can also speak a wonderful public speaking experience in existence. So the mind is that powerful. That's why I'm really big about mindset, growth, positive learning, optimistic, and get rid of the negative Nancy's, the Karens, the people who complain all the time, and just people who are misery loves company. MLC. I constantly talk about that, man. You're miserable. I'm getting the fuck away from you. I'm not kidding about that. When I meet people I think are miserable, I do everything I can to never be around them again. I do not want, I've noticed miserable people they spread their misery, right? And so I'm always looking for people like laws of attraction, positive, enthusiastic, polite, respectful people. Yeah, so, okay. My children are invited to a lot of my friends' houses, and they always say, I don't invite kids to my house because they don't have kids, but they're like, your kids are cool. They're respectful. They're polite. They generally, sometimes we don't even realize they're there. Like, it's really shocking when we're like, oh shit, Peter's kids are here, right? And they didn't even notice. Whereas like other kids come over and they're breaking everything, grabbing everything, and you notice them like, a lot, and it's annoying, right? And so I always thought that was a great compliment. Yeah. People barely notice it when my kids are even around sometimes. So that's really, really good, right? They can generally, I'm constantly big about like life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, right? Like if you say I'm bored, that's up to you to fix it. You're bored because you're bored. You're making a choice to be bored, in my personal opinion, right? Circumstances can be boring if you're really stuck somewhere without a phone and there's nothing to do and it's really hot out, right? I get that. But other than that, I think it's an attitude. Life is not boring, therefore I'm not bored. I'll count to 1 million to entertain myself. I've actually done that, by the way. So yeah, I've been trying to bail people out of jail, and you just gotta wait. You gotta just wait until the officers process them out and get them out, and you're just sitting there and you're in place. You can't use your phone, and it's very limited. And just yeah, I've been like, I'm gonna count to 1 million. It's pretty hard, actually. You gotta keep track. I noticed I couldn't do it in my brain. I would just count to like 1,000, then okay, start over, another 1,000, then 10 times get to 10,000, 100 times, then I'm up to 100,000. You got to see. Usually, I'm like, right, it's challenging. So, I have a fun game. I should tell you about it. It's called Want to Buy a Boat, and so you say you play with like people. It's a memorization game. So you start off want to buy a boat, and the other person has to ask a question about the boat. Like, so I say, do you want to buy a boat? And then you say, does the boat float? And I say, of course the boat floats. And then you say, then I'll buy your boat, right? So that's it. Then we move on to the next thing. It's your turn. You ask me, want to buy a cow? And I say, a what? And then you say, a what? And I say, a boat. And you say, a cow. And I say, does the cow sing? Does the boat float? Of course the boat floats. Of course the cow sings. Then I'll buy your cow. Then I'll buy your boat. And then you go to the third round. You want to buy a pig? Want to buy a boat, cow? Want to buy a pig? Sorry, I already got that wrong. Want to buy a pig? Want to buy a boat? Does the boat float? Does the pig sing? Does the cow give milk? Of course the cow gives milk. Of course the kid sings. Of course the boat floats. Then I'll buy your boat. Then I'll buy your pig. Then I'll buy your cow. And you keep going until we've been in like a car with like 5 people and we've gotten up to like 90 rounds about what, and you're just repeating and it gets into a pattern. It's a pretty fun little game though. And then you can make it sexual because I would ask girls like, you want to buy a dildo? And they're like, is the dildo big? Right. And you can have a lot of fun, right? Because you can just do obnoxious stuff. But the idea is it's easier to remember all the things you're saying if you kind of use more exotic stuff too. So anyhow, that's just a little game I was talking about. All right. And then number 5, let's restate the evidence in your own words. That's paraphrasing. Remember that's the 3rd step of the evidence 3 step. Number 1 is cite the author, the source, the date. Number 2 is present the evidence. Number 3 is explain it in your own words. Yeah. Paraphrasing, awesome. Paraphrasing is a skill where you can explain something in your own words. I have found in life that if you want to understand, like, do I know this or not? Period. You don't have to have a license, a degree, or a lot of experience. You ask yourself, kind of explaining in my own words. So my friend the other day, he was asking me, my kid's in AP chemistry. I studied chem in college. Do you think I can tutor him? And I asked him, can you explain chemistry using your own words? And he's like, yeah. And then I'm like, you can definitely tutor chemistry for your son. Right? Does everybody see that? If you really want to know if somebody knows something or understands something, they should be able to explain it in their words, including yourself. So it's a great way a litmus test to really understand, like, do you understand how a combustion engine works? Because my kids were asking this the other day, right? And I'm like, oh, that's a good question. In my own words, so you have gasoline, it's highly flammable. The fuel injector shoots gasoline into your valves where there's a little piston above it. And then something ignites the highly flammable gasoline into an explosion, but it's in a little valve, which is controlled steel chamber. And so the explosion moves the piston up. And when you have a bunch of those, whether you have 32 valve, 32 via valve, 6-cylinder engine or 4-cylinder engine with so many valves, right? And all those explosions move the pistons, go up and down. That drives the actual front wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So basically, it's a controlled little miniature explosion of flammable gasoline with a little ignition in a control chamber, which forces the piston to go up. And then as the pistons go up, that rotates the axle to create drive in your drivetrain, which moves the engine, and then the engine powers the car to move forward. And that's really how a combustion engine works. Yeah. So, and that's why you get pollution, because when you ignite the gasoline in the control chamber, you get emissions, smog, and that comes out the exhaust pipe and shoots out there, right? And if you breathe it, you could die. That's carbon monoxide. Anybody here think I did a good job explaining how a combustion engine works in my own words, right? And it's like, yeah, I think I did, because I understand how an engine really works to drive a car, a gas combustion engine. And if you didn't know, I'm going to show you a little fact that I think everyone should know, is how inefficient is your combustion engine? And the answer is 20% thermal efficiency. So every time you blow up gas and blow it and control explosion in your piston in your valve to drive the piston, drive your car, only 1/5 of the energy burned fuel actually turns into usable energy. 20%. So your car engine is 80% inefficient, if you're wondering. It's a horrible way to drive a car. Any kind of transportation, right? That's what gas and electric cars should have been out when Tesla invented it. Nikola Tesla invented it like 105 years ago. But if you know the story, I think GM bought it and then just stuck it in a vault and then did nothing. They chose the combustion engine, mostly because I think the oil companies were pushing them, saying that we can make a lot of money together if you make your cars run on oil, right? Standard, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Valero, British Petroleum, all these companies. So. Is anybody shocked? Your combustion engine in your car is it's 80% inefficient, right? That sucks. Think about how you would use products where whatever you buy and whatever energy you put into it, you're only getting 1/5 return out of it, right? And 4/5 is wasted, right? Most of us wouldn't have a product like that, but we don't have too many alternatives, right? Besides bicycles, walking, public transport. Okay, then translate your evidence to a picture. Can you understand how your combustion engine really is 80% ineffective now? Right? You're throwing money. Let's say gas costs $6 a gallon. So when you throw $6 of gas and a gallon of gas into your engine, you're only going to get 20% of that $6, which is $1.20. So you're paying $6 for a gallon of gas, but you only actually get $1.20 with a gas power movement out of your car, right? Because the 80% of it is lost as heat or other types of energy in your combustion engine. Reasoning by analogy, that's where we compare things. Really good skill to compare things. Look in your speech topics where you can compare, like efficiency, or compare beaches to each other, or compare theme parks to each other, right? One of the reasons I think Great America never made it is because California has Disneyland, and Disneyland's just the king. And then California also has Six Flags, right? In Vallejo and then Valencia in Southern California, I think it is. So it's pretty, I've always thought it's great. It's going out of business if you haven't heard. They sold the land, and then within 11 years, they'll change it into something else. But I'm going to miss Great America, even though I don't take my kids anymore. That was a great deal, by the way. The Gold Pass, super great deal. So, okay. Probably why they maybe lost so much money on it. So, all right. Or they didn't make as much money as they wanted to, is actually probably the better way to put it. So, and a lot of people in Bay Area, South Bay Area, got their first job at Great America. They employ a lot of 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. So, Rashad, I mean, that's, in 100 years of car technology, we went from 20% to 30%, right? With only like maybe the Prius, and that's probably pretty limited which modern cars do that, because I think that there was a 2022 article I think I looked at, right? So I thought, but anyhow, it's pretty horrible. I'm just saying that's pretty horrible, right? Like, if I had to study an hour and I only got 12 minutes of effective studying for every hour of study, I would fucking quit school, right? Does you see what I'm saying? 80% inefficiency. I'm swearing a lot today. I'm sorry about that, by the way. I'm a little jacked up, and I'll try to tell you why. Life has been stressful. Just a lot of just been 5 summer school classes, plus work, plus my kids, plus the dogs, plus the grading is just, I can't keep up with them. Usually I do a really good job keeping on top of it. So it's been piling up. That to me gets a little bit stressful, right? I get anxiety when like work piles up, these huge piles around me. So, but I'm going to work on it today, tomorrow, Thursday. So there you go. All right. Causal reasoning is understand X causes Y. No, it's really Z causes Y. So that's alternate causality. A lot of causality is wrong by human beings. We think we know what causes X or Y, but we don't. What's causing you not to sleep? Your diet, stress and anxiety, your blue light on your phones or TV screens, you're drinking coffee after 2 p.m. or some sort of caffeine. You don't exercise enough, because when you exercise, you get tired, and being tired makes you want to sleep. It's actually the reason I sleep really easily. I'm always like physically exhausted. So I actually haven't been able to ride my bike as much the last week or so too, ever since summer school started. And that's been because it's my mental therapy a lot too. When I go on a bike ride, I can kind of like really mentally and then physically it's really good for me. So I'm losing like double whammy when I don't get to go on my bike rides too. And the dogs are like, we want to go out. So, and the reason my definition is just arguing like, what's marriage? Man, woman, woman. Again, the Supreme Court may change it back from same sex to only man, woman. I'm going to throw that out right now. They're going to try. I don't know if they're going to succeed, but if they overturn all women's rights, you can see they could take away gay rights, and how the gay people are going to fight that, right? They're a much smaller force than all the women in America. So, okay. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, talking about pathos and emotions. So Maslow said that if you want to understand people's needs, you have to understand where they are on the hierarchy. Hierarchy is like a ladder. Very few people at the top, many people at the bottom, right? So the bottom level is called physiological needs, where you're fighting for food, air, and water. Then after you have physiological needs met, because you can't skip levels, right? If you cannot make friends with social needs, if you're always starving to death, right? So get your physiological needs met, food, air, and water, then you work on being safe and security for your family, your possessions, like from animals eating your kids in the cave to social needs. Now I want to make friends, make community. Then I work on my self-esteem, who I am, which then can figure out self-actualization, what my purpose in the world should be. So I'm going to tell you another quick story about self-actualization and my interpretation of it. So even though I have a family and I lost my little sister and achieved some things in life, I actually think that maybe I'm self-actualized. And what I mean by that is My little sister died. I watched my parents and I go through this and how to heal and recover as a family and always mourn because you never completely heal. It's like a scab that never heals up. It's because you're just, like every time I go Christmas, my sister's missing. That does never, you never forget that. And I tell my children all the time, hey, you had an auntie, but she's not here. And the reason she's not here, she passed away, but she's here in spirit. And you can think about her and talk to her. And when we think and talk about her, it's kind of like the movie Coco. I believe that you exist, right? Because I don't believe in heaven. And I believe my sister exists as long as we remember her. The people on the earth remember her. Just like the movie Coco, I love the idea of Dios de los Muertos. I actually think we should adopt the same holiday and make it, Halloween, the last Saturday. By the way, that's a great speech topic, by the way. Every Halloween should just be the last Saturday in October now, instead of the 31st. Because Halloweens on a Friday or Saturday night are lit. And Halloween's on weekdays and school nights, not as much. And then the kids eat the candy, get all freaked out. They're not going to school the other day. Most of the schools are actually making school after Halloween a day off because they realize it's terrible for the teachers. And right, and the kids are up all night and then they're on sugar. It's not a good combination. So you might as well just let them have a holiday. Don't school today. So that's what I would do as president. By the way, Halloween's going to now be the last Saturday. I would also make every month 30 days. No more stupid 28-day months like February and no more 31 days. Every month is just 30 days. We don't need 365 days in a Gregorian calendar. It doesn't make any sense. We have the leap year where every 4 years we add 3 days to the calendar, right? So just every month is 30 days. Every year is 312 months of 30 days. It's just consistent and symmetrical. And that's what I would want to do too. I also would get rid of the numbers. I'm going off on persuasion speeches, Mr. President. So the teens are broken. Does anybody know what I mean in English? They're also broken in English and Spanish. Just the teams. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And this is one reason that contributes to, I think, why Americans are not good at math. Because in Arabic and all the Asian languages, the teen numbers are correct. They are not broken. But in English and Spanish, hella broken. Anybody know what I'm talking about? 11 through 19 are broken. Anybody figure out what should they be? What are they in Chinese, Mandarin, or Cantonese, or in Japanese, in Korean, in all Arabic, and most of the Russian? It's not broken. What is it? 11 equals 10 plus 1 in good languages. Because what's 21? 31 forever after that. Does everyone see? It follows the same pattern. 31, 41, 51, 61, 71. But 11 isn't 10-1, it's 11. So the 11 through 19, the teen numbers are broken. They don't follow the mathematical pattern. They're arbitrary and random. Does everybody see that? So just like 21, 31, it should be 10-1, 10-2, 10-3, 10-4, 10-5, 10-6, 10-7, 10-8, 10-9, 20. And that's what I would also officially do in the English language. I would change our numbers from 11 through 19 and get rid of 11 and make it 10-1. Once in Spanish, that's why it's broken. But if you look it up in Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, it goes 10-1, 10-2. There's no 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. There are no teen numbers, right? They make no sense at all. MathNet is a pattern. You cannot just randomly change the pattern for the teen numbers and then have the pattern after that be consistent forever, right? Telling you. Okay. People who are unsafe can't worry about their esteem or social needs, right? So understand where your audience is in terms of the hierarchy of needs, and then you can make the appropriate appeal to that need, and then they'll listen. All right, pathos. It means emotional appeals. Have you ever begged for something or tried to avoid punishment? Actually, I remember my sister, she got caught smoking cigarettes in like in 8th grade. And I remember like this letter came home and I was reading it and I was like, she's fucked. That's what I was thinking, right? Like me and my brother, we were like getting popcorn. We were like, we gotta watch this. Mom and dad are gonna hella beat her ass. Like metaphorically. And I remember like they get the letter and they're reading it and they're kind of annoyed, not mad, but like they're not happy. 11, 10-year-old girl should be smoking cigarettes in the late 80s. And then they confront her. Me and my brother are watching right from the hall, or like with our popcorn. And then they're like asking her about the letter, and she just starts crying. And my parents are like, oh, okay, forget about it. My brother were like, what? Like, that was us, right? No way we could cry our way out of the punishment, but she did. And it was a great example of just you making an emotional appeal and overwhelms the logic. And there you go. Right. Does sex sell? Yeah. 2/3 of advertising in America has indirect or explicit direct sexual references to sell. And they do that because it works, right? Sex preys on our emotions. It's a want, not a need. We're not like animals who go into heat and could die if we don't have like sex. So like it's a want, not a need. And so that's why it really works for pathos. First time I was in court and I lost a big case, I knew I was going to lose, by the way. I was up against this woman attorney. There was a jury. We had some pretty good facts on our side. And I remember that the woman attorney had a lot of cleavage. And I remember like looking at some of the guys in the jury and they're just like, and I remember thinking like, dude, we're going to lose. Dude, boobs. We don't have any boobs. And it's a good example of like, does everybody see that? You would think in a courtroom, that shouldn't matter, but it does. It's the real world. The courtroom, as much as they try and sequester jurors and give them rules, give them rules about what to do, what they can say, what they're supposed to not hear, even though it was said in the classroom or in the jury, in the courtroom, they're supposed to ignore it, right? So just, yeah, but it works. And then do you have a fetish? The answer is yes. We're taught fetishes as young children. Fetishes are irrational, obsessive compulsions to consume something. Like little kids learn a Lego fetish. They want Legos. They want Yoda dolls, or sorry, what's the new Yoda called again? Grogu, right? Because of Star Wars branding. Or they want Spider-Man or Captain America clothes and toys and outfits and pajamas, right? Or lunchbox. And then as men, we get into our cars. We're obsessed and irrational about our spending in pursuit of cars and brand names and modifications. Or it could be over your video game system. Women, it could be handbags or dress shoes or makeup kits, right? Where you're irrationally, obsessively compulsive about buying and using this product or service, right? Because capitalism taught it to you through massive advertising when you were young. And we're just, we know Starbucks. Like my kids have fetishes already because in our society, they know that, like, I'll give you a good example. They love to sing the O'Reilly's Auto Parts song. O'Reilly's Auto Parts. They just love it. And then when they see it anywhere we're driving, they're like, look, O'Reilly's. Huge auto parts business, by the way, worth billions and billions of dollars. But it's crazy. Does everybody see that? How American culture teaches little kids, little fetishes. You must have this. You must buy this. You must possess it. You must spend your money on it. You must look this way, dress like that, have the style, right? And just consume, because we have a capitalist economy where we need people to earn money and spend it. And fetishes prey on your emotions, right? There's a famous quote: you want to be rich, don't sell people things they need, sell things that they want, right? Because you'll do stupid ass shit on stuff you want as opposed to maybe it's things you need, right? So crimes of passion. In this article, a Texas father beat Jesus Flores to death with his hands because he caught Jesus Flores raping his 5-year-old daughter. He's not facing murder charges because in Texas, they asked all the jurors, would you convict this father of murder? And every juror said, no, I would have beat Jesus Flores to death with my own hands too. And so the dad got away with murder. And the idea of what happened was when he rescued his daughter from Jesus Flores, he had to stop beating the guy to death. And the dad kept beating him to death. So that part became murder. You can use deadly force to rescue a sexual assault victim in Texas, but once they're rescued, you have to stop the deadly force. So at this point, it was just revenge, right? That's murder. But they dropped the charges against him. And it's a good example of a crime of passion that people basically say, I understand your emotions as a father with this circumstance, and I'm going to let you get away with the murder, killing another person with your own hands, because I emotionally understand it, right? And that's crime of passion. The most famous crimes of passion are definitely murder affair lovers, right? If you ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption, the guy goes to jail and he's innocent because his wife's having an affair, and this guy shoots the lover and the wife in robbery. But the cops think it was him because he was a jealous husband who found out about the affair and killed the 2 lovers. So he ends up going to jail, and even though he's innocent, and then all these things happen to him while he's in prison, right? It's a great movie, and it's actually an original short story by Stephen King, who is probably the best fiction writer of all time in our modern generation, by the way. If you don't know who he is, he's really, really, really good books and stories and movies throughout the 80s, 90s. And then even today, he's sort of made a comeback because he kind of took a break for a while. Okay. It is the most powerful persuasive proof. With emotional appeals, you can really make people die for you, steal for you, kill for you. It's really understanding, and unfortunately in politics, the pathos they use a lot is fear. Be afraid of them taking your guns. Be afraid of the migrants invading our country. We need a wall to stop them. Be afraid of the Islamic terrorists. You know, be afraid of a black guy with a gun. You know, be afraid of police officers. Right? Just fears is a really, really commonly used emotional appeal in politics, and because it works. You saw that Hitler did it a lot too. Actually, you know, the Jews are trying to get us, right? The French and the British are trying to get us with the Versailles Treaty. And the Russians are going to get us, and then that's why we need a military. We should invade them before they invade us, right? Which is very much what Putin's doing. Because I don't know if you. It's kind of ironic that Putin loves to call all the people in his life who are the bad guys the Nazis, when he himself pretty much is the biggest Nazi on the planet. It's really, really dark. That dude is going to hell if there's a hell. I don't think there's a hell though, which is why he's probably getting away with everything he's doing. And they think he's the richest man on the planet unofficially, right? Elon Musk is the official richest man on the planet. Jeff Bezos is up there. Warren Buffett's up there. Juan Carlos Slim from Mexico is up there. But they actually think Putin is probably number 1 by a lot. But all his assets and money are hidden, right? Because he doesn't want people kind of like tracing it back to him. So they actually think his friends and family have a lot of his assets. So that's why we can't freeze his assets or his yacht, super yacht, because they're all other people actually own them, but you know, it's all sort of a straw, what we call a straw deal. It's fake, like a straw person who scares away the fake scarecrows in a field, right? It's fake. And this, again, is the most powerful persuasive proof. Tips. So select more appropriate emotional appeals. Given your audience, should you make them afraid? Should you make them excited or inspired or motivated? Should you make them feel angry or unjust, like a lynch mob? Establish common ground with the audience. Again, commonalities are the root foundation of relationships. Similarities really, really make for people want to come together, right? Just similar taste of music, food, race, religion, politics. I cheer for the same sports team. I like the same type of music. We drive the same kind of car, right? Has anybody here ever pulled up to somebody with the same car as you? You don't even know who they are, but you're like, wahoo, fist bumping, love your ride. I love your ride, right? And just, you know, I do that all the time with, I drive a Tundra. So you know, when I see other Toyota Tundra drivers and we up close, you know, yeah, you just, right? Only because they have the same car as you, nothing else. I mean, like, they could be like totally evil people from hell, but you still give them the head nod because they're driving the same car as you, right? Because you don't know them any better. But I'm showing you, it works. It works. Establish common ground with audience. I was hanging out with some cops the other day. We don't have much in common on surface. Then I start talking to them. I'm like, yeah, you're cool, dude. I was talking to my dad, his ex-Marine. A lot of times, police officers have served, and a lot of times they're ex-Marines. So you can drop some things that only Marines know. That kind of validates that. Yeah, you know, you know what you're talking about, right? I can do 20 quotes about Marines. By the way, Marines don't die; they go to hell and regroup. You can never trust a Marine. You can always trust a Marine with your life, but never with your wife or your wallet. Devil dogs, leathernecks. I know some more. Marines never retreat; they only advance in a different direction. You can go a couple other ones like that too, right? So, semper fidelis, which is Latin for always faithful. So once a Marine, always a Marine. It's another one, right? I remember a quote that I read in some Vietnam history book, and he said, "The meanest, most vile killer I've ever encountered on this planet Earth was an American 19-year-old Marine in Vietnam." Yeah, interesting. And Marine Corps training is basically how to dehumanize and kill the enemy. You just kill them, right? They're out to kill. They're not out there to win, to capture territory, to advance freedom. Marines are taught to kill. So, and I think that's good, because if you're a soldier, it's pretty much kill or be killed if there's a war, and that's what you should be good at if you're going to survive the war. So. Use a yes response where you ask rhetorical or survey questions where you know the answer is going to be Yes, you're a lot like the preacher who likes to say something and everyone's like, amen or hallelujah, right? Which, by the way, I think is great because it allows church members to be interactive and not just sit and listen for 90 minutes. I always love that. By the way, I consult, coach public speaking for a lot of church speakers and religious figures and pastors and preachers. Even though I don't believe in it, I do teach them to brainwash other people better. Kind of a pessimistic, dark way to look at it, but that's true, by the way. That's what I think. But it's public speaking, and I'm like I said, I don't try to judge what you say. I just try and teach you how to be better at it. There's maybe a few things I might judge you if you're saying these things, but for the most part, I'm very open-minded and supportive. And use the emotional appeal at the end of your speech, so maybe like the third main point, right? So it should be like the most emotional climax appeal. I talked about yesterday. I think rape is evil. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's illegal. I think it's evil. You can get sex easily without rape in this society. You could buy it. It's all over the internet. You can just go solicit it. People are very promiscuous compared to 100 years ago, mostly because of birth control, which I think why the Republicans want to control it. Because I think they think sex is immoral or something, or promiscuous sex is immoral. It's very all the religious stuff in the background there, right? So yeah, use the emotional appeal at the end of your speech, right? That rape is evil. I actually, part of me is leaning towards certain rape, death penalty crime. Let's just kill the rapists. Maybe repeat rapists, serial rapists, yes, death, or mandatory castration. Let's just cut off their penises. You know, Eighth Amendment unfortunately bars that in America, the prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. But maybe we can figure out something else. So okay, match your body language with your appeal. So you ever met somebody at a party and you're like, "Hey, having a good time?" They're like, "Yeah." Well, you asking, right? And it's because your body language doesn't say you're happy, having a good time. It looks like you're really bored and annoyed, right? So understand that your body language and your appeal, your verbal appeal, have to be consistent and line up, right? Some of you smile naturally when you speak. Some of you, it looks like I'd have to like tickle you to death to get you to smile. You're all very serious when you speak, right? And I understand why, because your brain is thinking. It's in the thinking mode, and thinking mode is usually serious, not fun and enlightening, right? So fun and enlightening. So just again, match your body language to your appeal. If your topic is exciting, show that in your body language, right? Smile. Number one comment I'm gonna make for people who don't smile in their speech is you need to learn how to smile in public speaking, right? It's like the fake smile that you do for a picture. Cheese, like I said, I would say money, because people make money makes you happy, right? No, I know it's hard. Exactly. I absolutely, it is hard. That's just one of the things you need to teach yourself, though. And it's like, I'm a serious Asian kid. I had to learn how to smile a lot, and I did. I'm still not great at it, but I can smile when I need to. And I understand when smiling is important, especially when you're around communicating with other people, right? Here's the other thing, Brandon. 70% of facial expressions are reflected back to you. So if you smile at people, you get a lot of smiles back. If you give people resting bitch face, you get a lot of resting bitch face back. That life is stressful and kind of weird and awkward that way. So I'm like, man, I'm gonna make my life easier by smiling. I think that I really think it's like that simple. Does that make sense, Brandon? I'm not saying you can pull it off. I'm saying it is hard, but it's super beneficial if you can learn it, right? And it's just, and I'm telling you, kids have to learn this too, because when you have a lot of kids, you're like, hey, can we get a picture? They're always like, right? It's not. Sometimes you don't feel like smiling. I get it. Right. But that's why I'll teach you the trick that I have. So as a lawyer, I talk on the phone a lot. Right. So I have this drill. Phone rings. I look at caller ID. I'm like, client must answer. Before I answer, this is what I do. I ratchet up my fake smile. And then I go, hello, great to hear from you. Does everybody see that? Totally fake. But I actually do this little thing. It's kind of my little like way to teach me. Yeah, I don't feel like, but I'm in business mode. Hello, lots of enthusiasm. Great to hear from you. How are the kids? Oh, you don't have any kids. Sorry, how's your dog or your cat? Right? Does everybody see what I'm saying, Brandon? I have this little thing. I kind of I ratchet up the fake smile, crank it up, right? And just to kind of tell me, like, yeah, it's not easy. I gotta like crank on the fake smile, right? And that's a little tool that I actually use to kind of just say, I'm going to a birthday party, right? I'm tired. But as soon as I go in, I'm about to enter the door, I go, because I need to put on that public, it's a party. I want my body language to be festive. And I don't want to hurt this person's party by being a bad mood. Does everybody see that? The negative Nancy coming in the party, something like that. Okay. Use pauses in your delivery. Pauses let heavy things sink in. Pauses let humor create and then laughter, so you don't have to speak over. Or you say something and people applaud, so you pause and don't have to speak over the applause. So pauses are really good. Slow down your speaking to let emotional peels really sink in and let the audience member kind of chew on and digest it and see how it's going to affect them, and then whether they can now really agree with you. Here are the types of speeches. Don't worry about these. We don't on these, but because we don't speech in class either. But speech of reasons, problem solution, satisfaction, and negative method, right? So I will talk about motivated sequence, and this is just saying that like you kind of always need to gain the audience's attention, not a quote or a question or a shocking statistic or story at the beginning, but throughout the speech. And he says that a good speaker, when they're persuasive, they're always gaining attention, whatever way you can, right? You gain attention. Then you establish need. You need to learn this. You need to do this. You need to eat better. You need to sleep better. You need to take care of your mental health better. Right? You need to be more selfish and take care of yourself. Number 3, satisfy the need. This is how we're going to take care of this need. We're going to scratch this itch. Number 4, visualize the need satisfied. Isn't that awesome that we scratch that itch? Life is good. Now, let's do it. And that's Monroe's motivated sequence. That wraps up chapter 9. I'm done for the textbook lecture for the entire class.